Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hut. Now, I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off I thought it would be a nice idea if everyone can leave a comment and let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episodes. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. It started with something small. I didn't even notice it right away. I came home from work on a Wednesday, nothing special about that day. Long shift, I was tired, grabbed takeout on the way back. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a quiet complex. I've lived there about 2 years now. It's not the nicest place, but it's clean and quiet, which is all I really care about. When I got in that night, I threw my keys in the dish by the door like always, dropped my bag on the little bench by the entryway, and headed into the kitchen. Everything looked normal. Lights were off, blinds were still shut the way I left them. I set the takeout down, went to turn on the TV, and that's when I noticed it. The couch was off. I know that sounds stupid, but I always keep it aligned with the rug in the middle of the living room, OCD or whatever. I just like things straight. But now, the left side was a few inches forward, like someone had pushed it and never moved it back. Not a lot, just enough that the pattern on the rug wasn't lined up anymore. I stood there for a second staring at it, trying to remember if maybe I bumped it earlier that morning. But no, I didn't even sit on it before leaving. I'd been in a rush. Left my coffee mug in the sink, grabbed my stuff, and left like usual. I chalked it up to maybe bumping it without realizing. Ate dinner, moved the couch back, watched TV, went to bed. The next day, I noticed something else. It was morning, and I was making coffee before work. I opened the silverware drawer and reached for a spoon, and there were only 3. I have a set of 4. Always have. I bought them as a matching set from Target when I moved in. 4 spoons, 4 forks, 4 knives. Cheap stuff, but I kept track of it. That morning, there were only 3. I checked the sink. Nothing. Checked the dishwasher. Empty. I just run it the night before. Even checked the trash, just in case. No spoon. Just gone. I don't lose things. I'm not a messy person. And I live alone. That's when I got this weird prickly feeling in my arms. Like a low buzz under the skin. I tried to ignore it, told myself I probably dropped it or left it in a bag or something. But all day at work, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The couch. The spoon. Tiny things, but still. That night, I checked the locks. Both deadbolt and knob were fine. Windows locked. Nothing looked forced. Everything was still there. TV, laptop, nothing stolen. It didn't make sense. Still, I told myself to stop overthinking. Slept with the bedroom door shut that night, which I don't normally do. No reason, just wanted something between me and the rest of the apartment. A few days passed without anything weird. I tried to let it go. Then Sunday happened. I was off that day and decided to clean. I had music going, windows open a crack for fresh air. I vacuumed, wiped everything down, even pulled the couch out to sweep underneath. That's when I found something I know I didn't put there. Behind the couch, right along the wall, was one of my socks. A single black sock, rolled into a ball. Here's the thing, I don't take off my socks in the living room. Ever. I take them off in the bedroom, usually by the hamper. And this one had dust stuck to it, like it had been there for a few days, maybe a week. But I vacuum under the couch every Sunday. The sock hadn't been there before. At this point, I felt something in my stomach twist a little. I didn't have an explanation for it. I just stood there, holding this dusty sock, trying to make it make sense. I ended up checking the whole apartment. Every room, every closet, bathroom, bedroom, under the bed. Nothing was out of place. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there, or was still coming back. So I did something I didn't really want to do. I bought a little door camera. Not a full security system, just one of those motion-triggered ones that records clips when someone's at your door. I installed it that night. Monday came and went. I checked the footage before bed. Just a male guy and some neighbor walking by. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, though, I caught something. At 2:43 a.m., there was a clip. The camera pinged on, recorded 15 seconds. Someone was standing at my door. Not moving. Just standing. The guy had a hoodie pulled up, and he was facing my door, hands in his pockets. I couldn't see his face. He stood there for about 10 seconds, then turned and walked away. That was it. No knocking. No noise. Just stood there, like he was listening. Like he was waiting for something. I watched that clip maybe 30 times. Saved it to my phone. Then I called the building manager the next morning and asked if maintenance had come by late or if any neighbors reported anything weird. They hadn't. I showed him the video. He looked disturbed but didn't have much to offer besides call the police if it happens again. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the building made me sit up. I had a baseball bat next to the bed like I was suddenly 13 again. Thursday morning, I decided to take the day off. I was exhausted. I figured maybe I was just paranoid, but I needed rest. Around noon, I heard something that made my heart drop. I was brushing my teeth when I heard my front doorknob rattle. Just once. A quick shake. Then silence. I didn't move. I stayed in the bathroom, holding my breath. Waited maybe 5 minutes before creeping out. Nothing at the door. No sounds. But I checked the camera. Another video, 11:58 a.m. Same guy. Hoodie again. This time, he tried the doorknob. And then, this part made me feel sick. He leaned forward like he was trying to look through the peephole. Then he pulled something out of his pocket, what looked like a key, and put it into the lock. The video cuts off before I can see more. I called the cops right then. Told them someone was trying to break in, possibly had a key. They showed up fast, checked everything. The guy was gone. They didn't find signs of forced entry. I showed them the video. They agreed it was disturbing but said there wasn't much they could do unless I caught him in the act or he broke in. I didn't feel safe anymore. I packed a bag and stayed with my sister that night. The next day, I had a locksmith rekey my whole apartment. I added a chain lock, too. Put cameras in my living room and bedroom. It's been quiet since then. But the thing that still gets me, even now, is how small it all started. A couch moved a few inches. One spoon missing. A sock behind the couch. Little things. Just enough to make you second guess yourself. That guy, whoever he was, he didn't want to rob me. Nothing was ever taken. I think he just wanted to be inside. It was one of those random Wednesday nights where I didn't have much going on, and I figured I'd get laundry out of the way before the weekend. My building's machines had been acting up again, eating quarters, stopping mid-cycle, so I drove to this 24-hour place a few blocks away. It's not a sketchy area or anything. Just kind of empty after dark. Some small businesses around, a gas station across the street, that kind of thing. I got there around 9:30 p.m. It was mostly empty, which I liked. One other woman folding towels in the back, and an older guy nodding off in a chair near the dryers. I picked a washer in the middle row, threw my stuff in, and sat down to scroll my phone while it ran. About 10 minutes later, someone came in. I didn't look up at first, just heard the door buzz and the squeak of sneakers on the tile. Then I heard them walk kind of slowly past me, toward the vending machine area, then double back and sit 2 chairs down from me. That struck me as a little weird. There were maybe 10 empty chairs around the place, and they picked the one almost next to mine. I glanced over just quick. It was a man, maybe mid-30s, wearing a plain black hoodie and jeans. Clean-shaven, short hair, nothing really memorable. I didn't recognize him, and he wasn't carrying a laundry basket or anything. Just had his hands in his hoodie pockets, staring at the wall like he was waiting. I went back to my phone. A few minutes later, he said, "Hey, sorry, this is gonna sound random, but your name's Eric, right?" I looked up. "Yeah." He smiled a little. Not creepy or anything, just casual. I thought so. We used to live on the same street. Back in, Elmwood? Off 19th? I blinked at him. Elmwood? I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "You were in the yellow house, right? With the little blue mailbox? That was the house I grew up in. We moved when I was 13. I hadn't heard that address in years. Yeah, that's where I lived. A long time ago," I said slowly. "I lived 3 doors down. Brick house with a hedge out front. I was older than you, so we never really talked, but I remember you." I stared at him for a second. I didn't recognize him at all. And I would have remembered someone that age on our block. There were only like 6 or 7 houses in that stretch. Mostly old people or families with little kids. I said, "What was your name?" He paused a beat too long. "Josh." I waited for more last name, something, but he didn't offer it. "I don't remember you," I said. He chuckled. "Yeah, I was kind of a loner, I guess. Moved out when I was 18. You probably don't remember a lot of the neighbors from back then." I didn't answer. Something about it felt off. Not the way he said it, but how calm he was. Too confident. Like he expected me to just go along with it. He sat there quietly for a second, then added, "Small world, huh?" I gave a sort of polite nod and went back to looking at my phone. But I wasn't reading anything. My heart was beating a little faster. Something wasn't right. After a few minutes, my washer finished. I stood up, started pulling clothes out, and walked them to the dryer. When I came back, he was gone from the chair. I figured he'd left. Except, when I sat down again, I noticed something on the chair next to mine. A folded piece of paper. Like the size of a receipt, torn off something. I picked it up. On the inside, in neat handwriting, it said, "I remember you." I sat there for a second, just staring at it. It wasn't threatening, exactly. But it was weird. Like, why leave that if you really knew me? Why not just say it? I looked around. He wasn't in the building. I walked to the glass door and peeked out into the lot. A silver sedan was idling near the corner, headlights off. I couldn't see if anyone was in it. I stuffed the note in my hoodie and sat back down. I waited for the dryer to finish, trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe he did used to live on that street. Maybe I just didn't remember him. But when the dryer buzzed and I went to fold my clothes, I noticed something else. One of my shirts was missing. A dark gray long sleeve I just bought. It wasn't a mix-up, I only brought one load, and I knew it was in there. I remembered tossing it in first. I checked the drum twice, checked the floor, the folding table. Nothing. I felt this tight, cold squeeze in my chest. I got my stuff in the basket, booked it to my car, and locked the doors as soon as I got in. That silver sedan was still there, across the lot. Headlights off. I pulled out fast and didn't look back. When I got home, I dumped the laundry on my bed and sorted through it all again. The gray shirt was definitely gone, and the note was still in my pocket. I didn't sleep much that night. Kept getting up to check the windows. I didn't have any proof of anything, really. Just a weird conversation and a missing shirt. I tried to forget it. Told myself maybe I'd left the shirt at home, or it got stuck in another person's dryer somehow. I didn't go back to that laundromat, though. Not for a couple weeks. But 2 Sundays later, I had no clean clothes and decided to try a different place across town. One of those ones inside a strip mall, a little busier. I got there around 5 p.m., middle of the day, a bunch of people around. It felt safer. About halfway through trying, I went to the bathroom down the hall. When I came back, something was sitting on top of my laundry basket. It was my gray shirt. Folded neatly. Exactly the same shirt that had gone missing. I froze. My heart was pounding. I picked it up and checked the tag. It was mine. Same brand, same small bleach spot near the cuff. I hadn't brought it that day. It had just appeared. I looked around the room. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody even seemed to notice. I grabbed everything, even the wet stuff, and left. Didn't try the rest, just threw it in the trunk and went home. The next day, I installed a camera by my front door. Another one in my living room. I started locking the windows at night, even the ones on the second floor. I didn't see him again after that. No more shirts went missing. No more notes. But I still don't get it. He knew my name. He knew my childhood address. And he was close enough to return something straight to my stuff without anyone seeing. I don't know if he followed me from the laundromat that night, or if he already knew where I lived. I moved 3 times since Elmwood, and none of my places were ever listed under my name online. I checked. I just keep thinking about that note. I remember you. It started around the middle of October last year. I live in a small 1-story house, kind of tucked behind some older properties, so it's pretty quiet back here. My bedroom's in the back corner, facing the yard. Just one window with bushes right underneath it. Real basic setup. I live alone. The first time I heard it, I figured I was imagining things. I turned off the light for the night, laid down, and maybe 5 or 10 seconds later, I heard what sounded like a whisper. Just one word. Mark. It wasn't loud. Just soft, like someone standing outside the window trying not to be heard. At first, I thought it was something from my phone or maybe just a noise in the house. I sat up and listened for a while, but didn't hear anything else. Next morning, I didn't think much of it. Didn't mention it to anyone. I've always had trouble winding down at night, so I figured it was just my brain playing tricks. But it happened again the next night. Same thing, lights off, head on the pillow, and then... Mark. It was whispered the exact same way. Not urgent. Just like someone trying to get my attention. Right outside the window. I sat up fast that time. Reached over and flipped the light back on. Looked at the window but couldn't see anything, just the bushes and the reflection of the room in the glass. I got up, opened the curtain, and looked closer. Nothing there. I even went outside with a flashlight, walked around the house. Completely empty. No footprints in the dirt. No broken branches or anything out of place. But then it kept happening. Not every night. Just often enough. Every couple of days, sometimes 2 nights in a row. Always the same whisper. Always right after I turned off the lights. Never before. Mark. It started getting to me. I stopped sleeping well. Some nights I left the lamp on just so I wouldn't have to hear it. Other nights I sat up in bed waiting for it, like I was trying to catch whoever was doing it. But they never said it while the light was still on. I told a friend about it, just kind of casually, hoping they'd say something that made it all click. Like maybe it was a weird echo or animal sound I was mistaking for a voice. Instead, she got real serious and told me I should call the cops. But what could I even say? Somebody might be whispering my name, but only when it's dark. Felt stupid. One night about a week in, I decided to test it. I waited until everything was quiet, then turned the light off and sat up in bed, watching the window. About 15 seconds went by. Then, Mark. I swear to God, it was like it knew. Same voice, same exact tone. Just quiet enough that if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it. I jumped up and yanked the curtain back. Nothing. I even opened the window that time and stuck my head out. It was completely still out there. No wind, no movement. But the hairs on my arms were standing up. That night, I moved to the living room couch. Slept with the TV on. I was too wired to sleep in my own room. Next day, I bought a cheap motion light and set it up outside the bedroom window. It pointed right at the bushes. I figured if someone was creeping around back there, I'd catch them. For 3 nights, nothing happened. No whisper, no light, nothing. Then, on the 4th night, I turned off the light, laid down, and waited. 15 seconds. Then the light outside clicked on. I shot up and looked out the window, nobody there. Just lit up bushes and part of the yard. I ran outside with a flashlight, checked everywhere. Nothing moved. No noise. It was dead silent. The next night, I went out around sunset and checked the motion sensor, thinking maybe it had picked up an animal or a branch moving or something. I was standing in the dirt under the window when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The bush right under the window had been bent down in one spot, like someone had been pressing their weight into it. The branches were a little snapped, and some of the dirt looked like it had been disturbed. Not deep footprints or anything, but just messy in a way that didn't match the rest of the yard. I didn't sleep in my room that night either. After that, I started hearing it more often. Almost every night now. Always right after the light went off. Sometimes it would whisper my name 2 or 3 times, a few seconds apart. Mark. Pause. Mark. That second whisper always hit harder than the first. Like it was more sure I was listening. I stopped going in the room altogether. Slept on the couch every night. But then, a few days later, I heard it again, only this time, from the window in the living room. Mark. That voice had never come from anywhere but the bedroom. but now it had moved. It was like it knew where I was. I didn't go outside. I just turned every light on and sat there, heart pounding, for hours. I finally called the police that night. I told them someone might be lurking around my property, whispering outside my windows. I didn't even care how it sounded. 2 officers came by, walked the yard, looked at the motion sensor. They were polite, but I could tell they didn't really believe me. Said there wasn't much they could do unless someone broke in or damaged something. One of them asked if I might have been dreaming. That part made me mad. I hadn't slept right in a week. After they left, I bought a cheap indoor security camera and set it on the table by the window, facing the backyard, just to see if anything actually showed up. That night, I left the lights off in the room and stayed in the hallway, where I could still see the camera feed on my phone. Nothing happened for maybe 20 minutes. Then, on the screen, I saw something move. Just a blur at the bottom of the frame. Then the voice. Mark. This time, I recorded it. It wasn't super clear, but you could hear it just barely. I froze. Just sat there staring at the screen, watching the bushes move slightly in the bottom right. Not a lot. Just a little like someone was crouched behind them, shifting their weight. I called the cops again and told them I had video this time. They came back and did a more thorough sweep. Still no person. But they checked the footage and agreed it sounded like someone whispering. One of the cops' older guy didn't say much, but he looked kind of uneasy. They recommended I get more cameras and maybe stay with someone for a while, just in case. I had a friend a couple towns over with a guest room, so I packed a bag that night and drove over there. I stayed for 4 days. Didn't hear a single whisper. Didn't check the camera feed either, I just needed a break. When I finally came back, I walked the whole yard before going in. Everything looked the same. Motion light still worked. Bushes looked normal again. I was starting to think maybe it was over. That night, I turned on every light in the house and finally slept in my own bed. Woke up feeling like a person again. But when I went into the kitchen that morning, I noticed something on the floor by the back door. A small scrap of white paper, maybe torn from a notebook. It just said, "Lights don't help." The handwriting was small and shaky. I moved out 2 weeks later. Found a cheap apartment with no ground level windows. I don't care how paranoid that sounds. I haven't heard the voice since. But I still sleep with the lights on. I was driving back from my cousin's place out past Wilkinsville. It was around 10:30 at night, middle of the week, late October. Roads were mostly empty. I'd made the drive before, but not often, and usually during the day. My phone was clipped to the dash, running GPS. I wasn't paying super close attention, just letting the voice guide me while I zoned out to the radio. I was about an hour from home when I noticed the route had changed. It was subtle. Instead of keeping me on the main highway, it had me getting off onto a side road. The kind that doesn't even have lines painted down the middle. I figured maybe there was construction or an accident up ahead. It didn't say rerouting or anything, it just sort of updated. I didn't think much of it. The first few turns were fine. A little more rural than I'd like, but I grew up around back roads like these, so it didn't feel weird yet. The screen showed a bunch of tight turns and little unnamed roads, but the time to destination was about the same, so I went with it. About 10 minutes into the detour, I realized I hadn't seen another car in a while. Or a house. Or even a street light. Just thick trees on both sides and a barely visible road ahead. I turned the radio down without really meaning to. Another 5 minutes went by, and the road narrowed again. No shoulders, just trees and ditches. I started to get this uncomfortable feeling, not scared, just like I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I glanced at my phone and realized the little blue route line had disappeared. The map still showed my location, but no directions. No turn-by-turn voice, no route line. Just a dot in the middle of nowhere. I slowed down and looked for a place to turn around, but the road was too narrow. No driveways, no pull-offs, just a dirt ribbon between woods. I figured I'd keep going until I found a spot wide enough to turn. After maybe 3 more minutes, I hit a fork. One road curved off to the left, looked even narrower than the one I was on. The other looked more like a driveway. Not paved, just gravel and grass. I pulled over right at the fork and tapped my phone. The screen didn't update. I tried to close the app and reopen it, but it just froze. White screen, spinning wheel. I had signal, full bars, but nothing loaded. I couldn't even get a basic map to show up. I sat there for a second, debating whether to go left or try the gravel road. I figured left was the better bet. As soon as I turned onto it, I regretted it. The trees were closer, branches actually scraping the top of my car. I was going maybe 15 miles an hour now. After another minute, I noticed something off. I hadn't seen a single road sign. Not even those little green ones with county numbers. And the road surface was starting to fall apart, potholes, cracks, random patches of gravel. Felt more like a forgotten surface road than anything else. Then I passed something on the left. Just a quick flash out of the corner of my eye. A parked car, deep in the trees. No lights on. I only saw the shape of it for a second, but it looked old. Like 80s or early 90s. No driveway leading to it. Just tucked behind the trees like someone had pushed it there. I kept going. Didn't stop. Didn't slow down. After maybe another 5 minutes, the GPS voice finally came back. Out of nowhere, in that same calm voice. In half a mile, turn left. I looked at the screen. The map was back, and it was showing a left turn coming up. No road name. Just a sharp left turn icon. I felt a bit of relief. At least the system was working again. But I still felt off. I should have been closer to the main highway by now. I hadn't seen anything resembling a real road in at least 15 minutes. The turn came up fast. I nearly missed it. Just a gap in the trees, no markings, with what looked like tire ruts going into the woods. No street sign. Not even a mailbox. I slowed down and stopped right before the turn. My headlights lit up maybe 20 feet of the path. Just dirt, scattered with leaves. Real narrow. Almost more like a trail than a road. I looked back down at the GPS. Still showing the turn. Still saying it was the fastest route. I stared at it for a second. Then I backed up. As soon as I started reversing, the GPS said, louder this time. In half a mile, turn left. Same direction. Same road. It was like it had reset. I tapped the screen, trying to exit navigation completely, but it froze again. Spinning wheel. Then nothing. I pulled over and killed the engine. Sat there for a second in silence. No crickets. No wind. Just the faint ticking of the engine cooling off. I opened my Maps app manually, not the GPS one, just a regular one with satellite view. It loaded after a few seconds, but the map was weird. No road names anywhere around me. Just a mess of gray and green with a few thin lines, most of them not even labeled. I zoomed out and tried to find my location in relation to the nearest town. Took forever. The dot was moving slightly as my car idled, but I couldn't see anything familiar. The highway was nowhere near me. I was way off course. No clue how or when it had happened. I tried searching for the nearest gas station, thinking maybe I could just head there and get my bearings. Nothing loaded. Blank screen. Then I heard it. A crunch. Like a footstep. Not behind me, off to the right, in the woods. Just one. Then silence again. I turned off the interior lights and leaned forward, peering into the trees. Could have been an animal. A deer or something. But it hadn't sounded like that. It was heavier. Like someone stepping on a dry branch. I sat there, heart thumping, for a full minute. Nothing else moved. I decided I wasn't taking the left. I didn't care what the GPS said. I was going to backtrack the way I came, even if it took hours. I turned the car around carefully, headlights sweeping the trees. As I started driving back the way I came, I noticed something I hadn't before. On the right side of the road, not far off, there was a small clearing. Just dirt and broken branches. At the edge of it, there was a metal pole with a chain hanging between two posts. And on the ground next to it was a shovel. Just lying there. Clean. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. A mile later, I saw the parked car again. This time I looked directly at it as I passed. It was a brown station wagon. Windows fogged. No plates. But someone was sitting in the driver's seat. I only saw them for a second, just the outline of a person, totally still. No lights. No engine. Just sitting there in the dark. I didn't look back. I kept going, trying to remember the turns I took earlier. Eventually I saw the fork again, the one where I had first pulled over. This time I took the gravel road, figuring it had to lead somewhere. After a few tense minutes, it did. It connected to a wider, paved road, still dark, but with a faded center line. I followed it for what felt like forever until I finally saw a gas station. I pulled in, got out, and actually felt my knees shake a little. Inside, I asked the guy at the counter where I was. He named a town I'd never heard of, way south of where I was supposed to be. I still don't know how I got that far off track. When I looked at my phone again, the GPS app was working fine, acting like nothing weird had happened. I've never used that app again. I stick to the main roads now, even if it takes longer. And I don't drive through the woods at night. It started about 2 months ago, I think. I live alone in a one-story house in a pretty quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a small place on a dead-end street with those skinny front lawns that slope down to the sidewalk. My doorbell's one of those video ones that pings your phone when someone presses it, and it saves the clip automatically. I never even really used it, but it came with the house when I bought it. The first night it happened, I was dead asleep and didn't hear the chime, just saw the notification the next morning, motion detected, 2:47 a.m. I figured it was a cat or maybe a neighbor's dog. But I tapped on it, and it showed someone had rung the bell. That was weird, but not crazy. Sometimes people get drunk and knock on the wrong door, right? But when I played the footage, there was no one there. Just my porch. Nothing moving. Just a little wind blowing the branches around. I checked the whole clip. It was only 15 seconds, but not a single thing moved on screen. No bugs, no shadows. The bell sound played, clear as day. But there was no one standing there. No car pulling up. Just nothing. It kind of bugged me, but I let it go. Figured it was a glitch or maybe someone rang and ran off before the camera could trigger. That happens. Next night, same time, 2:47 a.m. Another notification. Another clip. This time, I was already kind of expecting it, so when I saw the alert in the morning, I sat up in bed and watched it right away. Again, the bell rang. Porch was empty. Completely still. That's when I started getting this cold kind of feeling in my stomach, like something wasn't adding up. I checked my settings to see how fast a motion trigger starts recording. Turns out it records before the bell rings by a second or two, which meant whoever was ringing it had to already be in frame. But they weren't. I started leaving the porch light on overnight, thinking maybe the camera just wasn't picking up someone standing in the dark. Third night, same thing. 2:47 a.m. bell rings. Camera lights up. Porch lights on this time. Bright. Clear. Nothing there. This went on for a week. Every single night, 2:47 on the dot. The bell would ring. I'd wake up to the chime, grab my phone, and watch a recording of my empty front steps. I stopped sleeping well. Started leaving my bedroom door open so I could hear better. I even sat up with the blinds cracked a few nights, watching the street. The camera always caught the bell sound, but never the person. Not even a glimpse. And there was never a sound outside. Not footsteps, not a car door. Just the bell and the clip. Eventually I called the company that made the doorbell, told them I thought it was defective. The guy on the phone ran me through a bunch of tests, and everything checked out. He said the camera was fine. Motion detection was fine. Wi-Fi was strong. There was no delay. I asked if maybe someone had hacked it or something, and he said they'd see a log if that had happened. There was nothing. Just the normal alerts. He suggested maybe it was a kid playing a prank and ducking out a few, but again, the camera sees before the bell is pressed. I started checking the rest of my property. The fence in the backyard was fine. No weird footprints in the dirt, nothing disturbed. I even put baby powder on the doormat one night. Next morning, no prints. But the bell had rung again. 2:47. I didn't have anyone to stay with, and honestly I didn't want to leave the house alone overnight. I just got real paranoid. Slept with the TV on. Kept a kitchen knife in my nightstand. Locked the bedroom door even though I was alone. I was tired all the time, and I couldn't explain any of it. Around the second week, I tried waiting up. I made coffee around midnight and just sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the door. 2:45 came and went. I had my phone open, the app ready. At 2:47, the chime rang. The camera recorded. I bolted to the door and yanked it open. Nobody. Street was empty. House is dark. It was dead silent outside. No cars. No wind. Just the hum of the streetlight at the corner. I stepped out barefoot, looked around, even walked out to the sidewalk. No one was hiding in the yard. Nothing behind the bushes. I wasn't imagining it. My phone was still in my hand, and the screen was playing back the clip. The doorbell rang. Porch was lit, but nothing was on it. I looked up and down the street and just stood there for a few minutes. Felt stupid and exposed. I went back in and locked everything. The next day, I bought a cheap little trail cam from the hardware store and set it up across the street, pointed at my house. It had infrared and a wide lens, so I figured maybe it would catch something the doorbell wasn't. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat in the living room with my phone and waited. At 2:47, the bell rang again. Same empty porch. Nothing in the doorbell clip. I waited until morning and ran across the street to grab the trail cam. Pulled the SD card and loaded it on my laptop. At 2:47, the camera showed my porch. The light came on. The doorbell rang. I could see the little LED light flash. But no one approached. Not from the sidewalk. Not from the side. Nothing. Just the bell ringing by itself. I watched the entire 2-minute clip leading up to and after the event. Not a single frame had a person in it. The porch light turned on by motion. Something had to move to trigger that. But nothing did. At that point, I called the non-emergency police line. Explained the whole thing, probably sounding like an idiot. They sent a guy out later that afternoon. He was polite but clearly didn't think much of it. Said it was probably a prank. I showed him the footage, both the doorbell and the trail cam. He just kind of shrugged and said maybe someone was using a signal jammer or something to mess with the Wi-Fi. Or throwing something small at the bell. But again, no motion. No object. Nothing hitting the button. No wires. No tampering. He told me to call again if it escalated, then left. I started staying at my brother's place after that. Brought my work laptop and some clothes and just left the porch light on overnight back home. The bell kept ringing. I kept getting notifications, same time. Even when no one was there to hear it. After about a week of that, I decided to go back and just uninstall the thing. I was done. I was gonna rip it off and get a normal deadbolt and be done with all of it. I got home around 6 p.m., broad daylight. The porch looked the same. No damage, nothing moved. I walked up and reached for the bell, just to pop off the faceplate and unscrew the thing, and I noticed something I hadn't before. The little button was scratched. Right around the edges. Like tiny little scrape marks. Not enough to notice at a glance. But when I looked real close, there were little gouges in the plastic. I went inside and checked all the windows. They were locked. Every one. I checked the back door. Still locked from the inside. Nothing out of place. I uninstalled the camera that night and patched over the hole. I never replaced it. Got one of those solid brass peepholes instead. The kind that doesn't need internet. Whatever it was, whoever it was, it stopped once the doorbell came down. But sometimes I still wake up around 2:45 for no reason. Just sit up in the dark and look at the door. I don't hear the chime anymore. But every now and then, I feel like someone's out there, just past the edge of the porch light, standing still. It rained for most of that week, which is probably the only reason I even noticed them. I live in a one-story rental house on a decent-sized lot, kind of tucked behind a strip of older homes. The backyard butts up against a little patch of woods, not deep or anything, but enough trees that you can't see the neighbors on the other side. There's a fence, but it's half-rotted in places. I've only lived there since March, and the yard's always been kind of a mess. I don't go back there much. That morning, I was leaving for work and saw something in the dirt outside my bedroom window. I almost missed it, but the light was catching just right, big muddy boot prints. Real clear. They started by the tree line, came across the yard, and stopped right under the window. And that was it. No prints going back. Just stopped. It had rained hard the night before, and the ground was soft, so there should have been some trace of whoever made them walking away. But it was clean. Like they walked up, stood there, and vanished. I crouched down, thinking maybe I missed something. But no, the grass past the last print was undisturbed. No broken blades, no mud dragged back over the fence, nothing. I checked the window, too. It was locked. Screen was intact. No smudges or marks, just the prints below. I don't know what I thought. Maybe a meter reader or a landscaper or something, even though I don't get either of those. I didn't do anything about it. Just stood there for a while, then went to work feeling off. That night, I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I locked all the windows again, even the ones I never opened. Closed the curtains tighter. My bedroom window faces the backyard, so I kept glancing at it while I got ready for bed. I didn't sleep great. Kept waking up for no reason, listening hard. The house is old, and it creaks when the AC kicks on, but that night every sound felt sharper. At one point I swear I heard something light hit the side of the house. Just once. Like a rock or a small branch. I froze for a few minutes, holding my breath, but nothing else happened. In the morning, I checked the yard again. The prints were still there. Still just the one set. No new ones. Still stopping at the window. On Wednesday, I came home late, close to 10, and before I even unlocked the front door, I noticed the gate to the backyard was open. I always close that gate. It doesn't latch properly, so I looped the chain over the post to keep it from swinging. I walked around and found it hanging open, chain still in place but slipped off the top. Like someone had unhooked it gently. There weren't any new footprints that I could see, but the dirt was starting to dry out, so maybe they just didn't leave any. Or maybe they came and left the same way. I closed the gate again and looped the chain tighter. That night, I left the lamp on in my room. Not because I thought it would help, just I didn't like the dark. I pulled the curtain all the way shut and stacked a few books on the sill to keep the edge from curling up. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up and saw the curtain shifting. Not a breeze, more like a tug. I sat up fast. The books had moved, not fallen, but tilted, like the fabric had been pulled from the outside. I stayed there frozen for I don't know how long. Eventually I got up and turned the lamp brighter, checked the window. Still locked. Still intact. But I didn't sleep after that. Thursday morning, there were new prints. These ones were smeared, like whoever made them had walked through wetter mud. They went the same path as before, from the woods to the bedroom window, but this time, they were a little off to the side. Like they'd stood at a slightly different angle. I could see where the edge of one boot had slid a bit on the grass. I called my landlord that day. Told him someone might be trespassing. He sounded annoyed but said he'd swing by later in the week and take a look at the fence. That was it. I bought one of those cheap motion lights that plugs in by the back door and put it facing the yard. I couldn't mount it high or anything, so I just set it on a chair inside the window and pointed it through the glass. It wasn't perfect, but it'd have to do. Friday night, I didn't sleep at all. I laid there with my phone in hand, brightness turned down, staring at the curtain. The light never came on. At 3:12 a.m., I heard footsteps. Just a few. On grass. Soft, but unmistakable. Then silence. I didn't move. I didn't look. I just stared at the ceiling, barely breathing. Eventually I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew it was light out. I jumped up and ran outside. There were more prints. A fresh set. Standing right where I thought I'd heard the steps stop. But this time, there were return prints. They went off to the left, around the side of the house. I followed them as far as I could, but they faded into the gravel by the driveway. That was the first time I realized something. The only window being watched was mine. Not the kitchen. Not the living room. Just the bedroom. Saturday, I skipped going out. I stayed home, kept all the doors locked, barely opened the blinds. Around 10, I shut everything down and sat in bed fully dressed, light on, holding my phone and a small hammer I'd pulled from the junk drawer. I waited. At 2:58 a.m., the motion light flipped on. Just a blink. Maybe 2 seconds. Then off again. I sat bolt upright. It has a 30-second timer. It should have stayed lit. I got up and crept to the window, peeled the curtain back maybe half an inch. Nothing. The yard was empty. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. No more light. No sound. I crawled back into bed, this time with my back to the wall so I could see the window and the door at the same time. The next morning, there were no new prints. But the motion light was gone. Not unplugged, gone. The chair I'd set it on was still there, slightly shifted, but the light was missing. I called the police that time. They sent someone out, took a report. He looked at the prints, by then they were faint and dry, and jotted some notes, but it felt like he didn't really take it seriously. Told me to get cameras, maybe a better fence. That afternoon, I went to a hardware store and bought a heavy-duty deadbolt and a security bar for the back door. Picked up one of those stick-on window alarms, too. I couldn't afford a full system, but I figured something loud might help. I didn't sleep Saturday night. Sunday morning, I found something under the window. Not footprints. Just a single, muddy handprint. Low on the wall. Like someone had crouched down and rested their hand there. I didn't even go back inside. I packed a bag and drove straight to my friend Rachel's place. Told her part of it, enough to make it make sense. She let me crash on her couch for a few nights. While I was gone, I asked my neighbor to check the place once or twice. He said it looked fine. Nothing moved. No lights on. Nothing missing. When I finally went back, everything was the same. No new prints. No new sounds. But I never found the motion light. And that handprint? It was gone, washed off by another rain, but the shape had stained the siding a little. Just faint enough to ignore if you didn't know it was there. I moved out 2 weeks later. Paid the fee, broke the lease. Didn't care. Nothing ever happened again. But I still think about those prints. How they stopped at the window. How they never led away. I didn't even notice the first time it happened. I was at the airport, waiting at my gate. It was a morning flight, 9:40 a.m. to Chicago, and I was sitting near one of those charging towers with a bunch of strangers around me. I was half watching CNN on the overhead TV, scrolling through my phone, kind of zoning out. An airdrop request popped up on my screen. Just a blurry photo, hard to tell what it was, and a device name, behind you. I declined it without thinking. I get random stuff like that sometimes when I forget to turn off airdrop. Usually dumb memes or prank photos from teenagers nearby. I didn't even look around. Didn't cross my mind. But then it happened again later that same day. I was in a coffee shop downtown. It was packed. Small tables, no real personal space. I was sitting against the wall waiting for my order when my phone buzzed. Airdrop, behind you would like to share a photo. Same name. Same blurry image, it looked like the top of someone's head, but zoomed way in and pixelated. I declined again, and this time I did look behind me. Just a middle-aged woman on her laptop and a guy reading something on a Kindle. Neither of them was paying me any attention. That started to bug me a little. When I got back to the hotel, I turned off AirDrop completely. I also changed my device name from my first name to just random letters. I figured if it was some stupid game or scam, at least I wouldn't be an easy target. The next day was fine. No weird requests. The day after, though, I was walking through Millennium Park around noon, near the big reflective bean sculpture. It was sunny, tons of people around, kids running in and out of the fountains, people taking selfies. I pulled out my phone to check the time. AirDrop, behind you would like to share a photo. My stomach dropped a little. I hadn't turned AirDrop back on. I swiped down to check, and yeah, it was off. Fully off. But the request was still on my screen, waiting for me to decline or accept. That didn't make sense. I turned the phone off completely, just held the power button until it shut down. Then I turned a full circle, scanning the crowd. Everyone looked normal. Talking, laughing, drinking iced coffee. A few people on scooters. I couldn't tell who was even looking at me. I left the park without turning my phone back on. That night, I stayed in my hotel room with the curtains drawn. I turned the phone on again just to use Wi-Fi and check my email. No notifications. No new AirDrop. But the next morning, last day of the trip, I was in line at the airport Starbucks, phone in my hand, trying to pull up my boarding pass. AirDrop, behind you would like to share a photo. This one was clearer. It was the back of my own head. I was wearing a green hoodie, the one I had on that day, and I could see my shoulders and the side of my ear. It was taken from close behind me. Maybe 3 or 4 feet. Just enough that I couldn't hear a shutter sound or feel someone standing that close in a busy place. I declined it, immediately looked behind me. Guy in a suit, woman with a stroller, some kids playing with their phones. I scanned every face. No one was holding up a phone. No one looked suspicious. I walked straight out of line and into the nearest bathroom. Locked myself in a stall and just stood there, heart pounding. I didn't know if I should call someone. The photo was gone, I hadn't saved it, and I didn't recognize any faces around me. Back at my gate, I turned off the phone again and kept it in my bag. When I finally boarded, I didn't take it out once. Didn't even turn it back on until I landed and got picked up. After that trip, I figured maybe it was done. Maybe whoever was doing it was just messing with random people in public, like a sick prank. That week, I reset all my privacy settings, changed my Apple ID password, and deleted any apps I didn't recognize. Even did one of those security scans just to be safe. Everything was quiet for about a month. Then I went to a concert downtown. I'd almost forgotten about the whole thing. It was outdoors, pretty packed, and I was near the back with a decent view. It wasn't until the opening act finished that I pulled out my phone to record a little bit of the crowd just messing around. As soon as I unlocked it, AirDrop, behind you would like to share a photo. I didn't open it. I put the phone in my pocket and turned around slowly. I scanned the rows behind me, maybe 20 or 30 people. Some facing forward, some talking. One guy caught my eye, black hoodie, standing still, hands in his pockets, looking down at the ground. I stared for a few seconds, but he never moved. Just kept looking down. I left the concert halfway through and took an Uber home. That night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again, this time with no AirDrop. Just a photo saved in my camera roll. I hadn't opened anything. I hadn't accepted anything. It was the same photo, the back of my head in the green hoodie. But this time it had a timestamp, 2:13 a.m. That's what finally pushed me to call the cops. I didn't really know what to say, just that someone was messing with my phone and might be following me in public. I showed them the photo. They took it seriously, to be fair, but said without more evidence, no license plate, no name, nothing, there wasn't much they could do. They advised me to visit the Apple store, maybe reset the device or switch phones. I did that the next day. Full factory reset, got a new number, new iCloud account, everything. Things were fine for a while. A couple months, actually. I stopped thinking about it. Then last week, I was in a grocery store near my apartment. Sunday evening, pretty empty. I had headphones in, kind of zoned out, pushing a cart. I pulled out my phone to check my list. AirDrop, behind you would like to share a photo. I froze. Looked up. There was a woman passing me on the left, holding a pack of frozen peas. A dad and his kid heading down the cereal aisle. A teenage guy stocking shelves. No one close enough to have just taken a picture. I declined it, shoved the phone back in my pocket, and left my cart in the middle of the aisle. Walked out without buying anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how someone had to be right there. They had to be in the store at the same time. Right behind me again. Always close, but never close enough to see. I tried to rationalize it. Some glitch. Some pervert targeting strangers. But the new phone, the new account, how would they know? How would they find me again? Then yesterday, I was on the subway during rush hour. Wall-to-wall people. I was crammed in the corner by the doors, one hand on the pole, the other holding my phone. I wasn't even using it, just holding it. AirDrop, behind you would like to share a photo. No preview image this time. Just the name. I looked up, trying not to panic. There were maybe 30 people in that car. Some reading, some listening to music, some staring at their feet. Everyone packed so close, you could feel every movement. I turned my body slowly, scanning faces. I felt someone's breath on the back of my neck too close, but when I turned fully around, it was just a guy shifting his bag. Nobody looked at me. When the train stopped at the next station, I pushed out and waited for the next one. I haven't taken the train since. I haven't gone back to that grocery store. I leave AirDrop off, always. I barely use my phone in public anymore. I don't know who's doing it. I don't know what they want. But someone, a real person, keeps finding me. In crowds. In stores. On trains. And they keep standing just close enough to take the picture. I used to go thrifting a lot. Just something to do on weekends. Mostly for old records or glassware, but sometimes I'd flip through the frames and pictures too, looking for weird old prints or ugly art to hang ironically. There's this spot I used to go a few towns over. Not part of a chain, just one of those cluttered, half-organized warehouse-type places with stuff stacked all the way to the ceiling. The kind of store that smells like dust and old books no matter what part you're in. Anyway, I was digging through a bin of framed photos one Saturday, mostly the usual stuff, embroidered Bible verses, water-damaged posters, family portraits left behind for who knows what reason. I pulled one out because the frame looked like real wood, and I figured I could pop the back off and reuse it for something else. But when I turned it over, I stopped. It was a photo of me. Like, unmistakably me. 6 or 7 years old, maybe. Same face, same dimples. Hair buzzed short like it was back then. I was standing in the middle of some unfamiliar living room. Wood paneling, floral couch behind me, those frilly curtains you only ever see in houses that haven't been updated since the 70s. I had on this blue and yellow striped shirt I sort of remembered owning. The weirdest part? I was looking straight at the camera, but not smiling. Just staring. My hands were at my sides, like someone had told me to stand still. And there was a shadow, just barely, like someone was standing just outside the edge of the photo, between me and the light. I stood there holding it for probably a full minute. I kept looking at the background, trying to place it. It wasn't my childhood home. Wasn't any of my relatives' places either. I was sure of that. I knew where I grew up. Every room. Every detail. I bought the frame. Told the cashier I just liked the look of it. At home, I took the back off, thinking maybe it was a reused frame and the photo had just been left in it by accident. But no, there was nothing else in there. Just the photo. No writing on the back. No date. Nothing to ID it. I texted my mom a picture of it and asked if she recognized where it was taken. She responded, "That's not you." I stared at the message for a while. I sent back, "What do you mean?" She wrote, "That looks like you, but it's not a picture I've ever seen before. That's not our house." That kind of rattled me. I called her and asked if maybe we visited someone once, stayed over somewhere weird when I was little. She said no. Said she'd remember a photo like that. Said it gave her the creeps. That night I kept the frame in the kitchen, face down. I didn't want it in my room. It just made me feel weird. Like I couldn't look at it for too long. A few days later, I went back to that same thrift store. I don't even know why. I just felt like I had to. I wanted to check the bin again, see if maybe there were other photos from the same batch, like maybe it was part of an estate cleanout or something. The bin was still there, but it was way emptier than before. Only a handful of frames left. None with people in them. I was about to give up when I spotted a small, square Polaroid wedged under the edge of a cracked mirror. It was the same house. Same ugly couch. Same curtains. This time it showed the hallway behind the living room and a different kid. A little girl, maybe 4 or 5, sitting on the floor. She was holding a stuffed bear and looking at something out of frame. I bought that one too. When I got home, I compared the two photos side by side. The furniture was in the exact same position. Same lighting, same wall clock showing the same time in both. It was like the photos had been taken seconds apart, but with different kids. I spent a few hours that night searching online for any hint of where the photos might have come from. Checked the store's Facebook page, tried reverse image searching, even looked up missing kids just in case. Nothing. Total dead end. That's when things got worse. The next night, I came home from work and saw the first photo. The one of me was no longer on the kitchen table where I'd left it. I looked all over, thinking maybe I'd moved it and forgot. Found it on the floor by the couch in the living room, face down. I live alone. There were no signs of a break-in. Nothing else had been touched. But it freaked me out enough that I put both photos in a drawer in my bedroom and locked it. 2 nights later, I woke up at around 2:30 in the morning. Just suddenly awake. No noise, no nightmare. Just that awful wide-awake feeling like something had pulled me out of sleep. My bedroom door was open. I always close it. Every night. I'm one of those people who needs the door shut to fall asleep. I got up, checked the windows, the front door, the back. Everything was locked. I told myself maybe I hadn't closed the bedroom door all the way and a draft moved it. I didn't sleep much after that. A week passed with nothing new. I stopped looking at the photos, tried to forget about them. Then on a Sunday morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside was another photo. This one showed a man standing in front of the floral couch. Middle-aged, bald, wearing glasses and a short-sleeved shirt tucked into jeans. He was looking down at someone who wasn't in the frame, smiling slightly. Behind him, just barely visible in the hallway, was my own face. Not little kid me. Me now. The angle was weird, like it had been photoshopped in or something, but it didn't look fake. It looked too real. Like someone had used a very recent photo of me and somehow blended it in. My expression was blank, just staring forward. I called the cops that time. Showed them everything. The thrift store stuff, the drawer, the photo from the mailbox. They took it seriously. Said they'd look into it. Took the photos for evidence, told me to call if anything else happened. I didn't feel any better after that. I stopped going out as much. Barely slept. Kept a bat by my bed. One night, around 3 a.m., I heard something thump in the hallway. Like a soft knock on the wall. Not loud. Just deliberate. I grabbed the bat and got up, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I opened the door and looked down the hall. Nothing. All the doors were closed. No sound. Then I saw it. The photo frame. The first one. It was leaning against the base of my bedroom door. I hadn't seen it since the cops took it. I moved out the next week. Left the city. Told the landlord I didn't care about the lease. Didn't explain. Just left. I never went back to that thrift store. Never tried to find out more. I threw out every picture I had of myself as a kid. Deleted everything off social media. Changed my number. I don't care if it was a prank or something worse. I just don't ever want to see that house again. It was a Thursday, late afternoon. One of those cloudy days where everything looks kind of gray, but it's not actually raining. I'd stopped at a coffee shop near my office just to kill time before going home. It wasn't one I went to often, maybe a few times before, but it had good Wi-Fi and it was usually quiet, so I figured I'd sit with a drink and scroll for a bit. I ordered an iced coffee, took the corner booth like I usually did when it was open, and put in my earbuds without playing anything. I do that sometimes just so people won't try to talk to me. It wasn't busy. A couple on the opposite side of the room, one guy working on a laptop, 2 employees behind the counter. That was it. A few minutes after I sat down, the bell over the door dinged. I didn't look right away, just sort of glanced up out of habit. Some guy had walked in mid-40s, maybe. Average height. Wearing a plain green zip-up jacket, jeans, dark baseball cap. Nothing really stuck out about him. He didn't go to the counter. Just looked around, paused for a second, and walked straight toward my table. I thought maybe he was headed to the table behind me, so I didn't move. But then he slid into the seat across from mine and sat down. I pulled my earbuds out and stared at him. Didn't say anything at first because I thought maybe he was confused or mistook me for someone else. But he didn't look confused. He sat like he was supposed to be there, like we were meeting on purpose or something. I said, "Do I know you?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me for a few seconds. Calm face. Not smiling, not angry. just watching. Then he said my full name, first and last, clear as day. I froze a little. I just kind of stared at him, confused. I said, "What?" He leaned forward a little, folded his hands, and said my address. My exact address. Apartment number and all. Then he said, "That's where you live, right?" I felt this tightness in my chest, like my whole body suddenly knew something was very wrong but didn't know what to do with it. I looked around to see if anyone else was noticing. The couple was chatting. The laptop guy was typing. No one even glanced over. I said, "Who are you?" Still calm. Still staring. "I just wanted to meet you," he said. I stood up. Fast. Grabbed my drink and bag without even thinking and said, "I don't know what you're doing, but if you follow me out of here, I'm calling the police." He didn't stand. Didn't flinch. Just nodded slowly like I confirmed something for him. I left. I walked fast but didn't run. I got outside and crossed the street without looking back. I didn't go straight home. I didn't even want to walk to my car. I went into a drugstore a block down and stood in the deodorant aisle for a few minutes, pretending to read labels until I could calm down. My hands were shaking. After that, I called a friend who lived nearby. Told him I needed to come over. Didn't explain why until I got there. He tried to reassure me. Said maybe it was a scam or someone playing a sick joke. Asked if I posted anything personal online recently. But I barely use social media, and I've never shared my address anywhere public. We looked through my accounts anyway. Nothing stood out. I went home late that night, triple-checked the locks, and pushed a chair under the doorknob. Didn't sleep much. Every sound felt louder than normal. A car passing, the fridge kicking on, pipes ticking, everything felt like it meant something. The next day I left work early and drove out to the police station. I told them what happened. The officer I talked to was polite but didn't seem too concerned. Said since he didn't threaten me or touch me, there wasn't really much they could do. Told me to keep an eye out, maybe get a door camera installed. I didn't expect much else, but still, hearing them say there was nothing to be done made me feel worse. I did get a camera, the kind you stick by the door with an app on your phone. I also started using blinds I used to leave open. It wasn't like me to be paranoid, but something about the way he just said my name and address like it was normal, like it wasn't even meant to scare me, messed with my head more than if he'd yelled or made a threat. A few days passed. Nothing happened. I started to think maybe that was it, some creepy one-off thing. Then the camera app pinged me at 3:11 a.m. Motion at the front door. I sat up in bed, heart racing. Opened the app. The feed was dark, but the porch light gave just enough to see someone standing just out of frame. Not on the porch. Off to the side, like they were trying to stay out of view but accidentally tripped the motion. I waited, watching, barely breathing. After about 10 seconds, he stepped forward just enough for the side of his face to show. Same guy. No expression. Just looked directly at the door, then slowly turned his head like he was scanning the windows. He stayed there for almost 2 full minutes. Never knocked. Never rang the bell. Then he left. I called the police again. This time they sent someone out, but by then he was long gone. They took a report, told me again to call if he came back. I showed them the footage, but all they could do was say they'd keep an eye on the area. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The camera app became this thing I couldn't stop checking. Every time it buzzed, even if it was just wind or a cat, I'd wake up. 2 days later, I came home and found a manila envelope taped to my door. There was no note inside. Just a printed photo, black and white. Low quality, like a still from a security cam. It showed me, sitting in that coffee shop booth. Same shirt, same drink, earbuds in. But the angle wasn't from across the table, it was from behind me. Over my shoulder. Someone had been standing behind me, taking a picture, while he was sitting in front of me. I called the police again. This time I didn't just wait, I drove straight to the station. Showed them the envelope, the photo, the camera footage from earlier that week. They opened a case but said unless he came back or I could ID him with a name, they couldn't do much yet. They asked if I had any exes, disgruntled coworkers, anyone who might hold a grudge. I didn't. That night, I stayed at a friend's. Kept the lights off at home. Took the camera down and brought it with me, just in case. He didn't show again. After that I changed everything. New locks, changed my number, got a P.O. box and stopped getting mail at home. I even moved apartments 6 weeks later. Paid extra just to break the lease. Nothing's happened since. It's been almost a year now. No more photos, no more sightings. But every time I sit down somewhere in public, I check behind me first. Every time. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get freaked out by something like a voicemail. Not the usual scary stuff, anyway. But this was different. It started one Friday night. I was home alone, which was normal for me. My roommate had gone out of town for the weekend, so I had the place to myself. I'd spent the evening watching some dumb YouTube videos, eating leftovers, and eventually decided to hit the sack around midnight. I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood. The kind where most people are asleep by 11. My bedroom window faces the backyard, which is fenced and pretty small. Not a lot of foot traffic or anything. I remember turning off the lights, setting my phone on the nightstand, and rolling over. My phone was on silent, but I always keep the vibrate on so I can feel calls or texts. I figured if anything important came through, I'd notice. I don't know how long I was asleep before it happened, but sometime after I was out cold, my phone lit up with a voicemail notification. It was from an unknown number, so I didn't think much of it right away. Maybe a telemarketer or something weird like that. But the message itself was what messed me up. I pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then I started hearing this quiet breathing. Slow, steady, the kind you'd hear if someone was just lying there, barely moving. Then a soft noise, like someone shifting or maybe coughing quietly. Then, unmistakably, it was me. I could hear myself breathing in my sleep, the occasional tiny sigh, the faint rustle of the blanket. The whole thing was recorded right in my bedroom. I froze. My heart started pounding. I jumped out of bed and grabbed my phone. The voicemail was definitely still there, timestamped from about 20 minutes earlier, which meant whoever recorded it had to be inside my house while I was asleep. I didn't hear anything else weird, no sounds from other rooms or the backyard. The front door was locked, like always. I went around the apartment, checking every window and door, double locking everything. Nothing was out of place. No sign anyone had been in. Still, the voicemail was proof someone was there. Inside my bedroom. Maybe standing right by my bed. I called my roommate and told him what happened. He joked about it being a ghost or something, but I wasn't laughing. I decided to crash at his place that night. The next day, I thought about calling the police, but I wasn't sure what they could do without a suspect. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints or anything. I did notice something odd on the voicemail number. It wasn't blocked or private. When I looked it up, it was traced to an old prepaid phone bought locally, probably unregistered. I told a couple friends, hoping maybe someone had a clue or had heard of something similar. No luck. After that, little things started happening around my apartment. At first, just weird noises. Like footsteps in the hallway outside my door when no one else was home. The creak of the floorboards by the closet. Once I found the bathroom light on when I was sure I'd turned it off. I started sleeping with a knife on my nightstand, not because I thought I could fight off anyone, but just to feel like I had something. One night, I noticed the backyard gate was slightly ajar. I'm positive I'd locked it. No one else had keys. I called a locksmith, changed all the locks, and installed a security camera inside my bedroom pointed at the door. I thought that would make me feel safer. For a few days, nothing happened. No strange voicemails. No noises. I started relaxing a little. Then the next voicemail came. This time, it was even worse. It started with silence. Then soft footsteps walking slowly across the floor. I could hear the faint click of something, maybe a lighter or a keychain, jingling as the footsteps got closer. Then, just as if the phone was put down on the nightstand next to my bed, I heard the quiet rustle of a jacket or shirt. Then the breathing. But this time, it wasn't mine. It was heavier. Shallow. Like someone was trying not to breathe too loudly. The message ended abruptly after about 45 seconds. I sat in the dark, phone in my hand, frozen. I showed the clip to my roommate. He told me to call the cops immediately. This wasn't a joke anymore. Someone was breaking in, recording me, watching me sleep. The police came out, took the voicemail recording and my security footage. But the camera never caught anyone. The door was still locked from the inside the whole time. They told me it might be someone who found a way in and out through a window or a hidden entrance I hadn't noticed. I stayed with my roommate for the next week. I checked every inch of the place, even hired a pest control guy to inspect for any hidden crawl spaces or loose panels. Nothing. I felt trapped in my own home, like I was being watched, but no one was ever there when I looked. Then one night, I was lying in bed at my friend's apartment, trying to fall asleep, and my phone buzzed. Another voicemail. From the same number. This one started with a whisper. "Look outside." My heart jumped. I grabbed my phone and glanced out the window. At first, nothing. Just streetlights and empty sidewalks. Then I saw a figure standing across the street, just barely visible in the dim light. He was standing still, hands in his pockets, head tilted like he was watching me. I slammed the curtain shut and called the police. They came right away but found no one on the street. I stayed at my friend's place for a long time after that. I eventually moved out of that apartment. I don't know who was recording me, or how they got in without leaving any trace. But every time my phone buzzes with an unknown voicemail, I still check it just to make sure I'm not hearing that breathing again. It started pretty innocently. I live in a small apartment on the second floor, facing the street. For a while, I didn't pay much attention to the people walking by, but then one night, around the same time, like 9:30 or so, I saw a man walking a dog past my window. Nothing weird about that, right? But something about the dog just caught my eye. The dog wasn't moving. I mean, the man was walking, holding the leash, and the dog was just standing there. Not pulling, not trotting, not sniffing anything. Just standing, like a statue. It wasn't even a matter of the dog being lazy or tired. The man was moving at a steady pace, and the dog stayed completely still. No tail wagging, no shifting weight, nothing. At first, I thought maybe the dog was old or sick. Or maybe the man was just pretending to walk it. But it was the same dog, same exact dog, every night. Same time. Same route. After a few nights, I started noticing other odd stuff about the man. He never looked at anyone, never made a sound. He had this blank expression, like he was somewhere else. His clothes didn't change either, a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. One night, I saw him cross the street to the other side, and the dog stayed right where it was, on the original sidewalk, still not moving. He kept pulling the leash, but the dog didn't budge. After a few steps, the man stopped, stood still, and stared straight ahead like nothing was wrong. Then he turned and walked back the way he came, dragging the dog behind him, still frozen in place. I started feeling uneasy. It was subtle, like the quiet in a room right before something bad happens. I couldn't figure out if the dog was alive or dead. I never saw it eat, drink, or even blink. And the leash stayed taut the whole time, like the dog was tethered to the spot by some invisible force. I got curious, so one night, I decided to watch from my window with binoculars. The street was quiet, just a few cars passing here and there, no other pedestrians. The man came into view exactly at 9:30, the dog in tow, leash tight. He walked slowly, no hurry. The dog stayed completely still, except for its head slowly tilting toward the man, almost like it was watching him. But the rest of the dog's body didn't move an inch. That's when I noticed something else on the dog's side. Near its ribs, there was a patch where the fur looked like it had been scraped off. Not fresh, but scabbed over. I don't know why, but that made it worse somehow. After a week of this, I started feeling watched. Not just by the man and his dog, but by whoever or whatever was behind that strange sight. I'd catch glimpses of shadows moving just past my door when I went to the bathroom at night, or the faintest sound of breathing from outside when I was alone in my room. One evening, I was cooking dinner when I heard a soft tapping on the window. I froze. The window was locked, but the sound kept coming. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, then 1. I didn't open the curtains to check. I just stood there, waiting. The tapping stopped. I locked the deadbolt on my door, turned off all the lights except the kitchen, and tried to ignore the sense of dread that was growing inside me. The next night, the man and the dog came by again. This time, though, the dog was slightly different. It was the same shape and size, but the fur patch was bigger, more raw-looking, and its eyes looked glassy, like they weren't really seeing anything. I started to write this off as some kind of sick joke or a performance art thing, but it kept happening. Every night. Same man, same dog. Same time. Always on that same street. One night, I was home alone and decided to try to get a better look. I went outside and stood on the sidewalk near the end of the block, waiting for them to pass. It was about 9:25 when I saw the man come around the corner. The dog was there too, on a leash, but still totally motionless. I stepped forward, and the man glanced my way, but didn't stop or say anything. I called out, "Hey, are you okay? Is your dog all right?" He didn't respond. Just kept walking, leash tight in his hand, dog dragging behind him like a limp puppet. I took a step closer, and suddenly, the dog's legs twitched. That's when I realized it wasn't breathing. Its chest wasn't moving, no matter how hard I tried to find any sign of life. I looked up at the man's face, and that's when something about him broke the silence. His eyes, dark, empty, with no emotion, locked on mine. For a moment, I felt like he was seeing through me, like I was just another thing he was walking past. And then, without a word, he kept going. I didn't follow. I just stood there, frozen. For the next few days, I tried to figure out if I could report this, but I wasn't sure what to say. A man walking a dead dog? Sounds insane. I called animal control, but they told me to call the police. I called the police, and they said it was a civil matter, not an emergency. I tried talking to neighbors, but no one else seemed to notice or care. One night, about a week later, I heard scratching at my window. My heart jumped. I looked out and saw the man standing right outside, holding the dog close, leash loose this time. His face was closer to the glass than I wanted it to be. I didn't open the window. He just stared for a while, then turned and walked away, dog still motionless. That night, I didn't sleep. I double-checked all my locks and called a locksmith first thing in the morning to add a chain lock. The next evening, the man didn't show. Or the night after. And then, after a few nights, the dog was gone too. No man, no dog. Just silence. I still don't know what it was about that dog or that man. Maybe the dog was really dead, and the man was dragging it along for some messed up reason. Or maybe something worse. But I'm glad it stopped. I moved out a few months later. The street feels different without them, quieter. I don't know if the man and his dog ever came back, but I don't want to find out. I was folding laundry in my bedroom, just doing that mindless weekend chore, when I noticed something weird. My laptop was sitting open on my desk, just like it always is when I'm home, but then the little green camera light blinked on for a split second. It wasn't steady or anything, just this quick flicker, like someone turned it on and off in a flash. I froze, folded shirt halfway in my hand, and stared at the screen. No one was on a video call. No apps were open that would normally use the camera. My laptop was just sitting there, logged out on the lock screen. I'd never seen that happen before. I checked the time, it was about 4 p.m., and I was the only one home. I figured maybe it was some kind of glitch, but that didn't feel right. The camera light isn't something that usually just flickers. It's pretty straightforward on these laptops. If the camera's on, the light's on. No way for it to blink by accident. Still, I didn't want to freak out. I just closed the lid, unplugged the laptop, and went back to folding clothes. That night, I kept thinking about it, and couldn't shake this weird feeling like I was being watched. I turned off the Wi-Fi on the laptop, scanned it with antivirus software, and nothing came up. No malware, no strange apps, no programs running in the background. But then the next day, it happened again. This time, I was in the living room watching TV when I saw the light flash on my laptop through the open doorway. I wasn't anywhere near the laptop, and it wasn't open, but the light flashed like before. Just a quick flicker. Nothing else, no camera app popping up or anything. I closed the laptop again, put it away on the shelf, but still felt uneasy. I started paying attention to small things around the apartment, sounds that didn't fit, or little details out of place. One evening, I came home from work and noticed the kitchen window was slightly open. I never leave that window open, it's on the second floor, and it's usually locked tight. It wasn't a huge gap, but enough to make me pause. I was sure I'd locked it before I left. I checked the whole apartment carefully. Nothing seemed missing. No drawers open, no signs of forced entry, no weird smells. Still, I locked everything down again and called a locksmith the next day to change the locks on the doors and windows. That night, after locking up, I sat on the couch watching a movie, but kept glancing toward my desk where the laptop sat. Suddenly, the green camera light flickered on again, just for a second. I felt my skin crawl. I grabbed the laptop, closed it hard, and shoved it in a drawer. Then I stuffed a bunch of clothes and books on top to hide it. The days after that were worse. I kept hearing footsteps when no one was home, or a quick rustling sound in other rooms. I told myself it was probably the building settling or maybe mice, but I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. One night, I was asleep when I heard a faint tapping noise coming from my bedroom window. It wasn't loud, more like a slow, soft tapping. I got up to check but saw nothing outside. I double-locked the window and closed the curtains tight, but the tapping kept going for maybe another minute before it stopped. I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to my bed, and made sure my phone was fully charged and right next to me. Then, a few nights later, I was folding laundry again. This time I was watching my laptop because I had it plugged in and on the desk. I was halfway through folding a shirt when the camera light came on. But this time, it stayed on. I looked at the screen, and there was a shadowy figure in the reflection of the laptop's black screen, just a shape, no clear face or anything, but definitely someone standing behind me. My heart started pounding. I spun around fast, but the room was empty. The hallway was dark, no signs of anyone. I closed the laptop quickly, grabbed my phone, and locked myself in the bathroom. I called 911. The police came within minutes. They checked the whole apartment, no forced entry, no one hiding. Nothing out of place except the open kitchen window, again, just slightly cracked. They told me maybe someone was messing with me, or some weird prank. But I told them about the laptop camera flickering, the tapping, the footsteps. They took it seriously enough to stay a little longer and help me check for any surveillance devices. We found nothing, no hidden cameras, no bugs, nothing that would explain the camera turning on by itself. I stayed at a friend's place that night. The next day, I replaced the laptop with a brand new one and installed all fresh software. I put a physical cover over the camera, you know, the sliding kind. But I still felt like someone was watching me. A week later, while I was out getting groceries, I saw a man walking slowly past my building. He looked normal, jeans, jacket, baseball cap, but something about the way he looked up at my apartment windows made me stop. He didn't just glance, he stared, like he knew I was home. I crossed the street and took a different route. That night, I kept my blinds closed tight. The tapping came again at the window, slow and steady. I didn't look. I called the police and reported the man, gave them a description. They told me to be careful and report anything else suspicious. The tapping never stopped, but I refused to open the curtains. After a few days, the man stopped showing up. Eventually, the noises stopped. I moved out about a month later. I never found out who was behind it or why they did it. But that flickering camera light? It was the first sign. And it was enough to change everything. I got back from a week-long trip out of state, just a normal vacation, nothing fancy. Flew back late Sunday night, caught an Uber from the airport, and when I finally got home, I just wanted to crash. I tossed my bags on the floor by the door and headed straight for my calendar on the fridge like I always do, just out of habit. I keep all my appointments and reminders there, nothing fancy, just a magnetic dry erase board with dates and a few notes. That's when I noticed it. My calendar was covered with appointments I didn't put there. At first, I thought maybe my roommate, or maybe I was so tired I forgot putting stuff down before I left. But no, my roommate was out of town, too. The whole week was empty when I left, and now it was suddenly filled up with things like 9 a.m. watch, 3 p.m. watch, and 7 p.m. watch. I blinked and stared at the board for a good minute. Watch. Watch what? It didn't make sense. I wiped one off just to see if the marker was old and smudged or if I was just tired. No, they were fresh. Sharp, neat handwriting in black marker. Definitely not mine. I asked my roommate when she got back the next day if she'd written those down as a joke. She looked confused and said no. I started feeling that creeping sense in my chest, the one you get when something's off but you don't want to admit it yet. I wiped the board clean that day and thought maybe it was some weird prank. Then I started noticing little things over the next few days. My phone screen would light up for a second, but there'd be no notification. My laptop camera light flicked on once when I was folding laundry in the other room. I checked the camera, nothing. But that light, it's supposed to come on only when the camera's in use, right? I hadn't opened anything that should have triggered it. At night, I kept hearing quiet noises outside my window, like someone was just walking past slowly, stepping on twigs or crunching leaves. I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, and normally that wouldn't bother me, but these sounds were too deliberate, like someone was pacing. I got up a few times to check, but when I pulled back the curtains, no one was there. Just the empty street and my neighbor's porch light. One evening, I was home alone, and my phone buzzed again. Another calendar alert. I looked, another appointment popped up. 10 p.m. Watch. The time was right now. I stared at it, confused, heart picking up. I looked out the window again, and for the first time, I caught a shadow moving across the street. It was a man, tall, wearing a dark hoodie. He didn't hurry, he just walked slowly, head down, hands in pockets. It wasn't just some random guy. There was something about the way he moved, like he was waiting, watching. That night I locked all the doors and windows, pulled the curtain shut, and sat in the living room with the lights on. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. But that watch thing, the calendar, the noises, none of it added up. The next day, I didn't go to work. I stayed home, watching the street from the window. Around 9:30 a.m., I saw the man again. Same hoodie, same slow pace. He stopped in front of my house and looked right at my window for a second, then kept walking. I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line. They said they'd send a patrol by. When the officer came that afternoon, he looked around, asked some questions, but there was no evidence, no footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing. He said sometimes people just lurk or walk by, but if it happens again, to call back. I figured the police visit would stop it, or at least make the guy think twice. But the next night, the calendar got more appointments. 12:01 a.m. watch, 2:47 a.m. watch, 4 a.m. watch. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that guy standing outside, watching my window. One night, around 3 a.m., I heard the doorbell ring. I froze. No one else lives here. I peeked out through the blinds, nothing. No one on the porch, no delivery guy, no trick-or-treater. I checked the camera footage the next morning, the bell rang, but no one showed up on the video. I started taking pictures of the calendar every day, documenting the new watch times, just in case. I deleted the appointments, but they'd come back, sometimes more than once a day. Then came the weirdest part. I started seeing small, fresh scratches on the outside of my front door. Like someone tried to get in but didn't. The scratches were too low to be from an animal. I'm 5 feet 7 inches and the scratches were about waist height. I stayed at a friend's place for a couple nights after that. When I came back, the calendar was clean. For a day or two. But then it started again, appointments showing up randomly, all labeled watch. One evening, I was getting ready to leave for work when I heard a soft knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole, no one. Then I heard the knock again, a little louder this time. I called out, "Who's there?" but no answer. I didn't open the door. I called my landlord to install extra locks and a peephole camera. I also changed all my passwords, just in case my devices were hacked. But the calendar kept filling up. Finally, one night, around 11 p.m., I got a notification on my phone. The calendar popped up again. This time it said, 11:30 p.m., watch. My heart hammered. I grabbed my keys and phone and decided I wasn't staying. As I stepped outside to get to my car, I caught movement across the street. The man in the hoodie was standing there, just watching, hands in his pockets. I couldn't move, couldn't look away. I walked faster, got in my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. I didn't want to look, but I did. The man was still standing there, unmoving. I drove away, out of the neighborhood, and didn't go back that night. The next day, I changed apartments. I told myself it was the safest thing to do. Since moving, I haven't had any more watch appointments on any calendar. The scratches stopped. The guy never showed up again. I don't know how he got into my calendar, or how he knew my schedule so well. But I'm glad I left before it got worse. It was just a regular Saturday at the mall, nothing special. I was by myself, just killing time before meeting a friend for dinner. I was wandering around, kind of aimless, checking out sales and looking for a new book or something. The place was busy, but not packed, typical weekend crowd, families, couples, teenagers milling about. I stopped near one of those little kiosks that sell phone cases and chargers, just scrolling on my phone. The music playing overhead was the usual pop playlist, nothing too loud. People chatting, footsteps clicking on the tile floors. It felt normal. Then out of nowhere, this woman just appeared beside me. She was maybe in her late 40s or early 50s, wearing a beige trench coat even though it wasn't cold. Her hair was a mess, like she'd been in a hurry. The thing is, I didn't recognize her at all, not from around here, not a neighbor, nothing. Without any warning, she stepped closer and hugged me. Not just a quick side hug, but a full, tight hug, like she was holding on for dear life. I froze for a second, caught completely off guard. I barely had time to register what was happening before she whispered right in my ear, "Don't go home tonight." Her voice was soft but urgent. The kind of quiet you lean in to hear, but it sends a chill down your spine. I pulled away and stared at her, confused and kind of stunned. She looked right back at me, eyes wide and serious, like she was scared but trying to protect me. I wanted to ask who she was, why she was hugging me, why she said that. But before I could say a word, she let go and disappeared into the crowd. Just like that. I blinked and looked around, but she was gone. I stood there for a minute, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what just happened. I figured maybe she mistook me for someone else. It happens, right? But that phrase stuck in my head, "Don't go home tonight." What did it even mean? I checked my phone, hoping for a text from my friend to break the weird energy, but nothing. Just silence. I thought about calling someone, maybe my roommate, but I wasn't ready to sound crazy. I decided to grab a coffee and calm down. The barista gave me a weird look when I ordered, like I wasn't making sense. I think I was shaking a bit. As I sipped my coffee, I kept glancing around the mall. Nothing felt right. The music sounded louder somehow. The chatter seemed distant, like I was underwater. I kept wondering if the woman was still around, watching me from somewhere. But every time I looked, all I saw were normal shoppers, normal faces. I tried to push it out of my head. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe she was just a stranger who lost it, or someone with some kind of problem. I shrugged it off and met my friend later. I didn't mention the ugh or the whisper. I didn't want to freak her out. That night, I got home around 10. The neighborhood was quiet, just the usual street lamps casting long shadows. I unlocked the door and went inside. My roommate wasn't home yet, which was normal since she worked late sometimes. I put my stuff down and sat on the couch. My phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Don't go to the back door tonight. I stared at it, heart racing. The message was simple, like the woman's whisper. No name, no explanation. I texted back, asking who it was, but no reply. I checked the locks on all the doors. Deadbolts, chain locks, everything was secure. Then I looked out the window toward the back door. Nothing. Just the dark yard and some bushes rustling in the wind. I called my roommate and told her about the message and the woman at the mall. She sounded freaked out but said she'd be home soon. I didn't sleep much that night. Around midnight, I heard a soft thumping sound coming from outside the back door. I froze, listening. It stopped. Then I heard it again, slower, like someone was tapping the door lightly, testing it. I didn't move. I just sat there, clutching my phone, ready to call 911 if it got worse. The tapping stopped. I waited another few minutes, but nothing else happened. In the morning, my roommate came home and I told her everything. She checked the locks again and said she'd stay home for the next few nights. After that night, nothing else happened. No more messages, no one at the back door. The woman at the mall never came back, and I never saw her again. I don't know who she was or what she knew, but I'm glad I listened and didn't just brush it off. Some warnings don't come with explanations. I still don't know how the hell it happened, but I saw someone wearing my stolen jacket months after it disappeared, and they waved at me like we actually knew each other. It started with the jacket itself. A few months before, I'd left it hanging on a hook outside a coffee shop while I grabbed my drink. I went back a couple minutes later, and it was gone. Just vanished. It wasn't an expensive jacket or anything, but it was my favorite, the one I wore every day when it was cold. I asked around, checked the lost and found, figured someone must have grabbed it by mistake or something. No luck. For a while, I just figured it was gone for good and tried to forget about it. But then one day, I was walking home from work about 8 months later when I saw someone across the street wearing what looked exactly like that jacket. It caught my eye right away. The fabric, the worn-out elbow patch on the left sleeve, the frayed zipper, all exactly like mine. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, so I kept watching. The person was walking toward a convenience store a block ahead of me. The street wasn't busy, just a few cars parked and a couple people scattered around. It was late afternoon, so the sun was low, casting long shadows. I slowed down, keeping my distance, trying not to look obvious. The stranger turned to look my way, and right then, they waved at me. Like a casual, "Hey, what's up?" wave. I swear, it was like they knew me. That's when my stomach dropped. I stopped dead in my tracks. I looked around to see if anyone else noticed. No one seemed to react. I didn't wave back. Instead, I just stood there, frozen for a second, heart pounding. Why would someone wearing my stolen jacket wave at me like that? The person disappeared inside the store. I debated whether to go in and say something or just keep walking, but something felt off, so I stayed outside. I stared through the window and saw them lean against the counter, chatting with the clerk. The jacket was unmistakable. Same ripped spot near the pocket, same dirt stains on the sleeve. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was probably just coincidence. Maybe it was someone who looked like me, or maybe it was a jacket that looked similar. But the wave, that freaked me out. It wasn't just waving. It was like a greeting from someone who remembered me, like they'd been watching me. I decided to walk on, but every few steps I glanced back, half expecting them to come after me. The street was quiet except for distant traffic and the faint buzz of a neon sign from a nearby bar. Over the next few days, I started noticing weird stuff. I'd catch glimpses of someone just out of sight when I was walking home at night. I'd hear footsteps behind me that would stop whenever I looked over my shoulder. Once, when I was at a park bench near my apartment, I saw a figure sitting across from me, but when I blinked, it was gone. One night, I got home around midnight and saw a shadow moving near my front door. I locked myself inside, but my hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my keys out. I didn't sleep well that night. I told a couple friends, but they thought I was overreacting or just stressed. I started changing my routes, taking longer ways home, and always checking over my shoulder. But that wave, that damn wave, it never left my head. Then one evening, I was heading out to grab a late dinner. I passed the convenience store where I'd seen the jacket. The lights were off, the door locked, but the jacket was draped over a chair inside, right in front of the window. It looked like someone had tossed it there. I stared for a minute, then turned away and walked faster. The next day, I saw a guy across the street from my apartment wearing a hoodie, but the way he stood, his posture, everything reminded me of the person in the jacket. He caught my eye and smiled, but it wasn't friendly, more like a smirk. Then he turned and walked away. I started to feel trapped, like someone was always there, just watching, waiting. I kept my phone in my hand whenever I went out, ready to call for help. I told my roommate what was going on, and she made me promise to call her anytime I felt unsafe. One night, I was sitting on the couch, windows closed and locked, watching TV, when I heard a tapping noise at the window. I froze and went to look, but the street was empty. No one there. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. The last straw was when I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a photo of me, taken from across the street, blurry but clear enough to recognize. No message, no number. Just a picture. I called the cops and filed a report. They said they'd patrol the area and keep an eye out. I started going to a gym farther from my place and avoiding going out alone after dark. After a couple weeks, the sightings stopped. No more jackets, no more smirks. No more photos. I don't know who that person was or why they waved at me like that, but I'm careful now. I always watch my back. Sometimes, when I walk by that convenience store, I see the jacket tossed in the trash bin behind the building. I'm just glad I didn't go home that night when I saw the wave. I never thought I'd be one of those people who freak out over their front door, but after what happened, I get why it can really mess with you. I was home alone that night, just a normal Tuesday, nothing special going on. I was about halfway through my shower when I heard the front door lock click open. Not just the door opening, but the lock itself, that distinct click you get when you unlock a deadbolt. I froze for a second, the sound so clear it made my heart skip. The shower was hot, the water running, so I figured maybe I'd imagined it. The house was quiet otherwise, no TV, no music, just the hum of the water. I kept washing, trying to convince myself it was probably the lock settling or the wind or something dumb like that. But then I heard it again. That click. Like someone had turned the deadbolt, unlocked it. My blood went cold. I stayed as still as I could in the shower, not making a sound, listening for footsteps or the door opening. But all I heard was silence. No creak, no thud, nothing moving. I waited for maybe a minute, my heart hammering, and finally, I gathered the nerve to finish up quickly and get out. Wrapped in a towel, I crept out of the bathroom and headed to the front door. I didn't want to look out the peephole or open it, just wanted to check the lock. I reached up, feeling for the deadbolt. It was locked. Locked tight. My mind was spinning. If someone had unlocked it, how did it get locked again? Did someone try to get in and then leave? Was it stuck and making noises? None of it made sense. I checked all the doors and windows. Everything was locked like normal. I called my roommate just to tell her what happened, half expecting her to say I was imagining things. She laughed and told me locks don't just click on their own, but then she sounded a little nervous too. I went back to the living room and tried to focus on something else, but I kept glancing at the door. Every little noise made me jump: the creak of the floor, the hum from the fridge, the cars outside. It felt like the house was watching me. I sat down on the couch with my phone in hand, ready to call 911 if anything else happened. That's when I noticed something on the floor near the door, a tiny, almost invisible scratch on the hardwood, right by the lock. Like someone had run a key or a screwdriver along it. I didn't want to believe it, but that's when the dread really started sinking in. Someone had been trying to get in. Or maybe they did get in, just long enough to unlock the door, then left it locked again so I wouldn't notice. I spent the rest of the night with every light on, door locked behind me every time I went to the bathroom or the kitchen. I checked the locks every half hour, trying to stay awake. When my roommate got home the next day, I told her everything. She helped me call a locksmith to change the locks and put in a security camera. After that night, I never heard the lock click again. But every time I shower, I still pause when I hear the house settle or the wind blow, waiting for that sound. Because I know now the lock clicking open wasn't just the house. It was someone trying to get inside. I never really believed those "someone's watching you" stories until that winter. It started off subtle, just small stuff that didn't make sense. I live in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where people barely lock their doors and everyone knows everyone, or at least, that's how it used to be. It was around the end of November. The nights were getting long and cold, and I was working late a lot because of a project at work. I got into the habit of leaving my car in the driveway so I wouldn't have to walk down the dark street at night. One morning, I went out to leave for work, and there was a Polaroid photo tucked under my windshield wiper. The photo was black and white and a little blurry. It showed my house. Not the front, like from the street. This was from the side, maybe from the backyard. You could tell it was nighttime, and the porch light was on, casting a small circle of glow. That was it. No people, no movement, just the house, quiet and dark. I stood there for a second, flipping it over. No message, no name. Just that one photo. I figured maybe someone dropped it there by accident or some prank. I tossed it in the trash and didn't think much about it. Then it happened again. A few nights later, same thing, another Polaroid under the wiper. This one was from a different angle, but still the house at night, the porch light glowing faintly. I started feeling a little weird about it, but still told myself it was just some kid screwing around or a neighbor trying to be funny. I didn't notice anything else strange at first. No footprints in the snow, no car parked where it shouldn't be. Just those photos showing up like clockwork every couple of days. I stopped leaving the car outside, started parking on the street. But then other things started happening. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of crunching gravel outside. It was faint, but enough to pull me out of a deep sleep. I live on a dead-end street, so the only cars that drive by are people who live here or occasional visitors. I peeked through the blinds, but everything looked normal. No headlights, no movement. I told myself it was probably just a raccoon or something. The next night, the same crunching noise, but this time a little closer, like footsteps just outside the driveway. I held my breath and stared out, waiting for a shadow or a car to appear. Nothing. After that, I started locking every door, even the back door that I'd usually leave unlocked. I checked the windows before bed, pulled the curtains tight. Then, the photos changed. One evening, after a long day at work, I went out to the car and found a new Polaroid. But this one was different. It showed my front door. The porch light was off, and it was darker than usual. The photo had been taken from just a few feet away, like whoever took it had been standing on my porch. That hit me like a punch to the stomach. Someone had been right there, at my front door, late at night, taking pictures without me knowing. I looked around the driveway and the yard, trying to see if there was any sign of someone, footprints in the frost, a misplaced branch, anything. But it was clean, like no one had been there. I called the police to ask about getting some kind of patrol around, but they said it was a quiet neighborhood and nothing to suggest I was in immediate danger. They suggested I get a security camera, which I did, but I kept feeling like it wasn't enough. The next photo was worse. It was taken inside the house. I swear, it was taken inside my living room. The angle was from near the hallway, looking out toward the front door. You could see my shoes by the door, the edge of the couch, the coffee table. It was dark, but I could make out the shapes. I must have dropped the photo on the floor and stared at it for a long time before I worked up the nerve to throw it away. At this point, I was on edge all the time. I stopped answering the door for anyone who wasn't a close friend or delivery. I changed my routine, coming home at different times, parking in different spots. But the photos kept coming, always showing some new angle of my house, always at night. One night, I heard the doorbell ring around midnight. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I didn't answer. It rang twice, slow and deliberate. Then stopped. I didn't check who it was on the security camera until the morning. It was just some car parked across the street. No one got out. But my stomach was in knots the whole night. Then came the worst one. It was a photo of me, sitting in my living room on the couch, watching TV. I was wearing the same shirt I had on that day. The shot was taken from a low angle, like someone crouched near the window or a bush outside, aiming the camera right at me. I didn't see anyone outside that night, no noise, no movement. But this photo proved someone had been close enough to look in through my windows and take pictures of me without me knowing. I called the police again, showed them the photos. They took the prints off the last one, but it didn't turn up anything. They told me to stay vigilant, maybe install better lighting, and consider a security system with motion sensors. I did all that. I got floodlights with motion detectors, cameras all around the house, inside and out. I installed alarms on all the doors and windows. One night, around 2 a.m., I was sitting in my kitchen when I saw a light flash on one of the outside cameras. I ran to the monitor, watching the live feed. There, by the side of the house, a figure was moving slowly. Dark coat, a hat pulled down low. The motion lights didn't turn on, which made no sense because they were supposed to be super sensitive. I grabbed my phone and called 911, whispering my address. I stayed inside, watching the live feed. Then came the worst one. It was a photo of me, sitting in my living room on the couch, watching TV. I was wearing the same shirt I had on that day. The photos kept coming, always at night. I didn't see anyone outside that night, no noise, no movement. But this photo proved someone had been close enough to look in through my windows until the morning. I cracked my phone and called 911, whispering my address. I stayed inside, watching the figure move closer, almost stalking the house like it was waiting for something. After a few minutes, it turned and disappeared down the side yard. The police arrived quickly but found no one. They did a perimeter check, no signs anyone was hiding or had gotten inside. I felt safer, but the unease stuck with me. After that night, the photos stopped coming. I don't know if the person got scared or moved on, but I still get chills remembering it all. I changed jobs, moved to a different city a few months later. Sometimes, when I see old Polaroids, I think about those nights, about how someone could be standing just outside your window, watching you, taking pictures, and you'd never even know until it's too late. I was on my way home from work late one night, just a little past midnight, when I stopped at this gas station I'd never really liked. It was the kind of place with flickering fluorescent lights and a weird smell, like burnt coffee mixed with old motor oil. I'd pulled in because my tank was low, and it was the last open spot for miles. The place was almost empty, just one other car by the far pumps. The clerk inside looked tired, eyes half closed behind the glass counter, not really paying attention. I filled up, grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler, and headed back to the car. As I was unlocking my door, this guy walked up from the side of the building. I didn't hear him approach. He was kind of scruffy looking, like he'd been outside for a while. He didn't say hi or anything like that. Just stopped next to me, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I froze for a second, and my heart started beating a little faster. I looked at him closely. I didn't recognize the face, no matter how hard I tried. I mean, I'm decent with faces, and I usually remember people I've met before, especially if they look like they've been hanging around my neighborhood or something. I told him honestly, "No, I don't think I do." He smiled, but it was one of those weird smiles that didn't reach his eyes, more like a twitch in his mouth. Then he just turned and walked away, blending into the darkness near the edge of the parking lot. I watched him go, but when I glanced back, there was nothing. No car, no shadow, just empty space. I stood there a minute longer, trying to figure out if I'd missed something. Maybe he was joking? A stranger playing some kind of prank? I didn't know. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove off. At first, I thought that was the end of it, just some weird random encounter. But then things started getting strange. The next night, I stopped at the same gas station again. I hadn't planned to, but I was running late and figured it was the easiest place to grab a snack and fill up. This time, the same flickering light was buzzing overhead, and the smell was there again. When I went inside, the clerk gave me this look like he recognized me, but he wasn't sure from where. He was quiet, barely spoke except to ring up my stuff. I felt eyes on me from behind the snack racks, but every time I glanced over, no one was there. Outside, when I got back to the car, I saw a dark sedan parked 2 spaces down. No one inside. I thought maybe it belonged to one of the other late-night travelers, but it felt off, too still, too quiet. I didn't see the scruffy guy again that night. But over the next week, every time I went back to that gas station, I caught small weird things out of the corner of my eye, a shadow that moved just a little too fast, a figure standing behind a tree that vanished when I looked, and that same still dark car showing up in different spots around the lot. One night, I was inside grabbing a soda when I heard the door chime. I looked up, and there he was, the scruffy guy again, standing by the entrance. He didn't say a word. He just stared, like he was trying to see something inside me. Then, he walked right past me and out the door, disappearing into the night before I could say anything. It started feeling like he was following me. Not in a "hey, I want to hurt you" way, at least not yet, but more like someone watching a wild animal, waiting for the right moment to make a move. I stopped going to the gas station for a couple of days. I thought maybe if I ignored it, it would go away. But then, I started seeing him in other places. Walking down the street when I got off the bus, standing near the grocery store parking lot, sitting across the room at a coffee shop. Always watching. Never talking, just watching. One evening, I was walking home, and I heard footsteps behind me. I picked up the pace. The footsteps did, too. I didn't turn around. I was almost at my apartment building when I finally glanced back. He was there, a few yards behind, just watching. I crossed the street, hoping he'd keep going. He didn't. He stopped. I kept walking, trying not to look scared. When I got inside, I locked the door and checked every window. Nothing was out of place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. It said, "You don't remember me, but I remember you." No signature. No explanation. I called the police, but there wasn't much they could do without a direct threat or crime. They told me to be careful, maybe change my routines, and keep a log of anything suspicious. I started taking different routes, avoiding the gas station completely. I stayed with a friend a few nights, thinking maybe if I left town for a bit, it'd stop. But then, one night, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. That night, I heard a knock at my door. Slow, deliberate. I didn't answer. The knocking kept going, softer and softer, until it stopped. In the morning, I saw footprints in the dirt outside my window. They stopped right under the sill, like someone had been looking in. I packed a bag and left town for a while after that. When I came back a month later, the guy was gone. No notes, no texts, no shadow in the crowd. I never found out who he was or what he wanted. But every time I think about that night at the gas station, I remember that voice low, calm, like he was telling me a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. And I still don't know what it meant when he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I was sitting on my couch late one Friday night, scrolling through my inbox while half watching some dumb YouTube videos. My laptop was on the coffee table, and the room was dim except for the screen's light. It was the kind of night where I was just winding down after a long week, nothing special. That's when I saw the email. The sender was my own email address. At first, I thought it was a glitch or some kind of phishing scam, but the subject line was blank. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the trackpad, then clicked it open. The message was just 4 words. "I'm already inside." No signature. No explanation. Just that. I blinked and looked around the room. The front door was locked. The windows were shut. I live alone, and I hadn't invited anyone over. I felt my chest tighten. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my account was hacked, or someone was messing with me as a prank. I forwarded the email to a friend, who told me to change my passwords and update my security. I did all that, but it didn't stop me from feeling uneasy. Over the next few days, weird things started happening. The first was small and easy to dismiss. I'd be in the kitchen, and I'd hear a soft thud from the living room. I'd go check, and nothing was out of place. No sign of anyone else. I told myself it was the house settling or something falling off a shelf. Then, one night, I was on my laptop again when I heard the faintest creak from the hallway. I froze and listened. Nothing more. I told myself I was imagining it. The next morning, I noticed my bedroom door was slightly ajar, even though I always closed it before bed. I closed it again and locked it. I figured maybe I just left it that way, but the thought that someone might have been in there lingered. One evening, I stayed late at work to avoid going home. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat in the parking lot after my shift, hoping to clear my head. When I finally drove back, the streetlights near my house flickered on and off as I pulled up. The house looked normal, but as I got closer, I thought I saw a shadow move near the window. I stopped dead and stared. But when I blinked, it was gone. Inside, nothing was out of place. I checked every lock, every window. Everything was secure. But then I noticed something on my kitchen counter, a small piece of paper. It was folded and looked like it had been slid under the door. I unfolded it and read the words, scribbled in messy handwriting. "You can't hide." My hands shook. I called the police, but they told me without proof of someone inside or trying to break in, they couldn't do much. They said to be vigilant, maybe get a security system. I bought a cheap camera and set it up facing the front door and windows. For a couple of days, it showed nothing unusual, just my empty porch and the street. Then, one night, I checked the footage and saw a figure standing just outside the front door. They weren't moving, just standing there in the dark. I couldn't make out their face. After a minute, they disappeared. I went outside to look around. No footprints. No signs anyone had been there. After that, I started leaving a light on in the living room every night, and I kept my phone close. I didn't want to be alone. One night, I was about to go to bed when I heard a noise from the basement. I don't usually go down there, it's unfinished and creepy, full of old boxes and stuff. I grabbed my phone and a baseball bat and crept down the stairs. The door to the basement was closed. I listened. Silence. Then I saw it, a small scrap of fabric snagged on a nail near the doorway. It was a piece of black cloth, like from a jacket or hoodie. That was when I realized someone had been inside my house. I locked the basement door and called the police again. This time they came over and searched the place thoroughly. They didn't find anyone, but they took fingerprints from the scrap of fabric. Days later, they called me back. The prints matched a local guy with a record for burglary and stalking. I changed all my locks, installed an alarm system, and stayed with a friend for a while. It took weeks before I felt safe enough to sleep at home again. Looking back, I think that email was his way of letting me know he was already inside, watching, waiting. And the worst part? I have no idea how long he'd been there before I noticed. It started the day after a small get-together I had with some friends. Nothing big, just a casual night at my place, a few people, some drinks, chatting, music low in the background. I wasn't expecting anything weird, just a good time. The next morning, I woke up to a message from one of the friends who'd been there, Jake. He sent a group photo that someone else had taken toward the end of the night. I opened it, smiling, scrolling to find myself, my friends, and then something caught my eye. Behind me, standing way too close, was this man. Not anyone I knew. He was just there, looking right at the camera. No one else seemed to notice him. Everyone else in the photo was smiling or looking at each other, but this guy's face was just blank, kind of intense. Like he was waiting for something. I texted Jake right away. "Who the hell is that guy behind me?" Jake was confused. "What guy? I don't see anyone." I sent the photo with a circle around the man's head. Jake replied, "No idea who that is. Nobody remembers anyone like that being there." That made my stomach twist. I went back over everything I remembered from the night. We were all inside, doors locked, only the people I invited showed up. I'm usually really careful about who I let in. I asked the rest of the group if they recognized him. Everyone said no, nobody had seen or heard anything about a stranger crashing the party. One friend joked it was some ghost or something, but it didn't feel funny. The weirdness didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I kept seeing this man in my head, that blank stare, the way he just stood behind me like he belonged. I started noticing little things around my apartment. Like the first morning after the party, I found the back door unlocked. I'm super sure I locked it before bed. I always double check because of the neighborhood. I live alone and it's not the safest area, but I haven't had any problems until now. I thought maybe I forgot, but it didn't sit right. Then, one night, I was watching TV when I heard a faint tapping noise coming from the window. I paused the show and listened. It stopped. I looked outside, nothing but the empty street and a few cars parked. No one there. I figured maybe a branch hit the window, or some bird. Still, it made me uneasy. A couple of nights later, I was lying in bed and thought I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom door. I froze, holding my breath, but nothing happened. When I finally got the courage to look, the hallway was empty. The door to the hallway was closed. I don't keep it open at night. I texted Jake again, telling him about the door and the tapping. He said it sounded like someone might be messing with me, but none of us could figure out who or why. I started sleeping with the door locked and kept my phone close. Then came the worst part. One evening, I got home late from work. The street was quiet, the usual few cars parked. As I walked up to my building, I noticed a man standing near the entrance. He wasn't moving, just staring at the building. I didn't recognize him, but my heart sped up. I kept my head down and hurried inside. Later that night, I was lying on the couch when I heard the sound of someone knocking on my front door, soft but deliberate. I peeked through the peephole. No one there. I opened the door a crack, ready to yell at whoever was messing around. Nothing. I closed the door, locked it, and checked the windows again. I couldn't stop thinking about the photo, that man who somehow got in the picture without anyone noticing. I started checking my security cameras more carefully. I have a little system set up by the front and back doors. Nothing showed anyone entering or leaving. That's when I remembered the back door being unlocked. I went to check it again and found the lock twisted, like someone had fiddled with it but didn't fully open it. The next day, I told my neighbors. One mentioned seeing a man hanging around the building the night of the party, but they thought he was just a homeless guy or someone waiting for a friend. I realized I never saw him inside, just outside, watching. One night, after locking up, I heard my phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. It said, "You can't hide." I freaked out, showed the message to Jake, who suggested I call the cops. I did. They said they'd keep an eye on the area, but there wasn't much they could do without more evidence. After that, I stayed at a friend's place for a few nights, but I kept checking my apartment through the security feed on my phone. One night, the cameras caught something, a shadow moving near my window. I called the cops again. This time, they arrived fast, searched the building, but found nothing. I was desperate. I started staying with different friends, changing routines, trying not to be alone. Then, 2 weeks after the party, I got a message from Jake with another photo. It was from the same night. A blurry shot, this time taken from outside, showing the group through the window. And there he was again, that man, standing just behind me, looking directly at the camera. Nobody had seen him. No one remembered him. That was enough for me. I moved out of the apartment the next day. I never saw that man again, but I still get the feeling someone's watching when I'm alone, like he's just waiting to slip back into the frame. It happened about 6 months ago. I was working late, just trying to finish up some reports and get out of the office. I usually take the elevator down when I leave, don't really like the stairs, and the elevator's quick. This night, I was the last one in the office, so when I pressed the button, I was expecting to just ride down in peace and head home. But when the doors opened, there was a man standing inside. I didn't think much of it at first. He wore the maintenance uniform, dark blue with a name tag I didn't quite catch. I nodded at him, stepped inside, and pressed the button for the ground floor. I was tired, just wanted to get out of there. As the doors closed, he didn't press a button or say anything. I didn't think it was weird at first. Sometimes the maintenance people just ride along with you. But then, right as the elevator started moving, he turned to me and said, "We're gonna be stuck in here for hours." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Ah, really?" I said, glancing at the control panel. The elevator was moving fine, lights on, no issues. He didn't laugh. His face was serious, a little too serious. "Yeah," he said. "This thing always breaks down. We're gonna be here for a while." I felt my stomach tighten a little, but I tried to dismiss it. It wasn't unusual for an elevator to break down now and then, but it wasn't anything I needed to panic over. The building was well maintained. There was a slight shaking, a weird lurch, but the lights flickered, and everything stayed on. It seemed normal. The elevator kept going, and I noticed he wasn't looking at me. Instead, his eyes kept flicking back to the control panel, and then to the ceiling, like he was waiting for something to happen. Something about it made me uneasy, but I figured he was just a little on edge. Maintenance workers probably deal with all kinds of problems. But then the lights flickered again, and the elevator stopped with a jolt. I felt the sudden weight of the air in the small space. The floor indicator was still lit up, but the elevator wasn't moving. I pressed the emergency button, but the man didn't move. He just stood there, watching the panel. "Ah, are we stuck?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I wasn't sure if I was more annoyed or scared. This wasn't a good situation, but I wasn't sure what to do next. He didn't respond immediately, just stared at the panel like it was going to fix itself. Then he looked up at me and said, "Told you. We're stuck. Could take hours." I didn't know what to say to that. I had assumed he was joking earlier, but now it felt real. I tried the emergency button again, but nothing happened. "Should we call for help?" I asked, still trying to keep my voice steady, though I was starting to feel the tension in my chest. He shrugged, like he didn't care. "They won't come. The system's down." That made no sense. The building had a whole emergency response system. There was no way no one would show up. The maintenance crew would be notified, and someone would be there within minutes, right? But this guy, he just stood there, his eyes fixed on the control panel. I didn't know what to do. I could feel the heat in the small space building, the air feeling thicker, suffocating. I glanced at the man again. His hands were clenched by his sides, and his breathing was uneven. I couldn't tell if he was scared or if something else was going on. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked again, trying to keep my voice firm but not make it sound like I was freaking out. "Is this some kind of joke?" His eyes snapped to me, and for a split second, I saw something in them, a weird, wild look that made my stomach drop. "You really think they'll help you?" he said, his voice suddenly low. "They won't. They'll leave us in here. It's always like this." It's always just the two of us. I laughed again, but this time it didn't feel right. What do you mean, the two of us? I asked, trying to hide how nervous I was starting to feel. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned back to the control panel, messing with the buttons again. His hands were shaking, and for a moment, I thought maybe he was just as scared as I was. But then he looked at me again and said, "We're gonna be here for a while. Hours. Could be longer." His eyes locked on mine, and there was something unsettling about the way he said it. Like he knew. I didn't know if I should argue or just shut up. Something in the pit of my stomach was telling me that this wasn't a normal situation. I felt trapped, like I was in a tiny box with a man who had suddenly turned off. I glanced around the elevator, looking for some way out. But everything looked normal, besides the fact that we were stuck in a box with no way to reach the outside world. I pressed the emergency button again, but still nothing. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I felt it shaking. "What's wrong with you? What do you mean, the two of us? What's going on?" My words were coming out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Something about the way he was acting, the way he was looking at me, made my nerves jump into high gear. He grinned, but it wasn't a friendly grin. It was empty. "It's just us now," he said. He took a step closer, and I instinctively stepped back. "Just us in here, waiting. We'll be stuck in here for hours." I don't know how, but I knew I had to get out of there. This wasn't just some malfunctioning elevator. This wasn't just a worker having a bad day. Something was wrong with him, and I needed to leave before it got worse. I didn't know how to get help or if anyone was coming, but I couldn't just stay there and let this guy get closer to me. I pressed the emergency button again, but this time I shouted into the intercom, "Help! I'm stuck in the elevator. Please, someone, help me." I don't know how long it was, maybe just a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, I heard someone on the other end, responding to my call. "We're sending someone right now. Stay calm." I didn't look back at the man. I just kept my eyes on the doors, hoping that the rescue crew would get there fast. And they did. The doors finally opened after what felt like forever, and I practically stumbled out of the elevator as soon as it did. I didn't look back at the man. I didn't want to know what he was doing or where he went. I just got out of there. I haven't seen him since, but I still get a sinking feeling whenever I have to ride the elevator. I don't think I'll ever forget the way he looked at me that day. It wasn't normal. It wasn't just a malfunction. There was something else. I never imagined my college experience would take a turn like this. I mean, who does? You're 19, away from home for the first time, living in a shared dorm room with someone you barely know, trying to figure out classes, friends, everything. But what I experienced was something I'll never forget. Something I wish I could erase from my memory, but I can't. I met my roommate, Lauren, during orientation. She seemed like a decent person, quiet but friendly. We bonded over the usual small talk, where we were from, what we wanted to study, all that. She was into psychology, and I was in the art program, which I thought was interesting, but we didn't have that much in common. Still, she seemed cool enough. She was always polite, a little reserved, but that wasn't anything unusual for someone trying to adjust to dorm life. At first, things were normal. We had our own space in the room, set up our sides, and generally kept to ourselves. But as time went on, I started noticing little things that made me uneasy. They weren't major at first, just small quirks. Lauren would lock the door whenever she came into the room, even if I was already there. If I asked her about it, she'd just say she felt safer that way. I thought it was odd but didn't give it much thought. Everyone has their things, right? As weeks passed, those little things became harder to ignore. She started coming back to the room later and later at night. Sometimes, I wouldn't hear her coming until after midnight. When I'd ask where she'd been, she'd smile and tell me she was out studying at the library. But I could never recall seeing her at the library, or really, anywhere on campus. She didn't hang out with other people, didn't go to parties, just went silent for hours and then reappeared, like nothing had happened. It didn't help that the whole time she avoided making eye contact when she spoke. She would look down or off to the side, always like she was hiding something. One evening, I had an early class and got back before her, so I decided to get some work done. It wasn't unusual for her to leave her things around, books, notes, and stuff, but today, I noticed something I'd never seen before, a small, wooden trunk tucked under the bed. I had no idea where it had come from. We didn't have trunks or storage containers like that in our room. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe it was just something she brought from home. But then I saw the key. It was on top of the trunk, just sitting there. A plain, old-fashioned key. I don't know why, but something about it felt off. I knew I shouldn't have touched it. I knew that, but for whatever reason, I couldn't stop myself. I picked it up and walked over to the trunk. I had a split-second debate with myself. I had no reason to go through her things. But then again, I didn't know her well enough to trust her fully. Maybe I was just curious. I don't know. I unlocked the trunk. The lid creaked open slowly, revealing a pile of stuff. At first, it just looked like clothes and some books. But as I started to dig deeper, my heart sank. There were items I recognized, things that belonged to other people on our floor. A scarf I'd seen Mia from down the hall wear every day. A pair of sunglasses I knew belonged to Mark. A notebook that had been in Jessica's bag, one I'd seen her working on in the common room. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the notes. Tucked between the clothes and the scattered items were several yellowed pieces of paper, each covered in neat, tiny handwriting. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. It was like a list, names, descriptions, observations. Each note was detailed, listing things like wears red jacket on Mondays or always sits alone in the dining hall. The handwriting was so precise, so deliberate. But what made my stomach turn was that some of these notes included personal details that no one could know unless they had been watching, really watching, every move these people made. I could feel the blood draining from my face as I read. The more I read, the more the pieces started to fall into place. Lauren hadn't been at the library all those nights. She hadn't been out studying. She had been watching us. She had been watching everyone in the dorm, taking notes, keeping track of what we did, what we wore, where we went. She had been stalking us. I shut the trunk with shaking hands, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. I didn't know what to do. What was I supposed to do? Tell someone? Go to the authorities? But what if I was overreacting? What if there was a perfectly innocent explanation for all of this? I needed to know more. I needed to understand. But I couldn't bring myself to open that trunk again. It felt like Pandora's box, and once you open it, you can't close it. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I left it there and decided to watch Lauren, see if I could piece together what was really going on. The next few days were a blur. I kept thinking about the trunk, about the notes. I watched Lauren, trying to figure out how deep this went. She was quieter than usual, always in her own head, as if she knew I was onto her. but she didn't say anything. She didn't act like she knew I had seen anything. Then came the night when I had to leave for a late study session. I had some things I needed to finish, but when I stepped out of the room, I noticed something that made my heart race. Lauren wasn't there. Her bed was untouched, but her trunk was gone. Panic set in immediately. Where did she go with it? Why would she take it? I didn't have time to think about it. I had to act. So, I grabbed my phone and sent a message to a friend, asking them to keep an eye on Lauren's room. I didn't know what I thought they could do, but I needed to know if she came back. The hours dragged on. I didn't hear anything from my friend, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. By the time I got back to my dorm, I was expecting to find everything back to normal. But I was wrong. The door to our room was ajar. My heart skipped a beat, and I pushed it open slowly. Lauren wasn't there, but the trunk was. It was back, sitting right where it had been, the lock securely fastened. But there was something different. Something was off. I took a few steps closer and noticed that the papers were gone. The notes, the lists of names and personal details, they were all missing. The trunk was empty now, except for a single piece of paper left on top of the clothes. I picked it up with trembling hands. On it was just one sentence written in Lauren's neat handwriting. I know you know. I didn't know what to do anymore. I had no idea who she really was or what she was capable of. But that note, that single line, made one thing clear. She was watching me now. It was one of those quiet nights where the world feels a little too still. I had just gotten home from work, and my dog, Max, was practically bouncing off the walls, ready for his evening walk. I didn't mind, it was peaceful outside, and honestly, I looked forward to the fresh air after a long day. I put on my jacket, clipped Max's leash to his collar, and we set off down the street. I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and there's hardly ever any real danger. It's the sort of place where you can take a late night walk without worrying about much. I'd done it 100 times before, just me and Max, circling the block. The lights in the houses were mostly off, the streetlights casting long shadows along the sidewalk. The only sounds were the crunch of leaves underfoot and Max's excited panting beside me. But tonight, something felt a little different. We had just passed the end of the block when I first noticed him. A man walking a few paces behind me. I hadn't heard him approach, but when I turned my head, I saw him. He wasn't walking aggressively or in any particular hurry. In fact, he seemed to be just walking at a normal pace, but his movements were too deliberate. As if he was making sure to keep just far enough behind that I wouldn't feel directly threatened. I didn't think much of it at first. It was a public street, after all. It was normal to pass someone on a walk, and maybe he just happened to be out for a stroll too. I continued walking, trying not to pay attention to the nagging feeling at the back of my mind. Max tugged on his leash, sniffing at the bushes along the sidewalk, and I focused on him, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. But after a few more steps, I glanced over my shoulder again. The man hadn't changed his position. He was still behind me, but now he was just far enough that I couldn't see his face clearly, only the outline of his body under the dim streetlights. He wasn't speeding up or slowing down. It was almost as if he was just keeping his distance. I started to feel uneasy. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just another late-night walker, like me. But the longer I walked, the more I noticed him. Every time I looked back, he was there, always keeping the same distance between us. It was like he was pacing me, moving at the exact same speed, staying just out of sight whenever I tried to glance over my shoulder. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I tried to shake it off. It was probably nothing, right? People walked at night all the time. But why hadn't he passed me? If he had been out for a walk like I was, wouldn't he have walked faster or overtaken me by now? I quickened my pace, hoping that he would either pass me or stop following me. But as soon as I did, he did the same. His pace matched mine, keeping that same careful distance. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Something wasn't right. This didn't feel like a random person out for a walk anymore. It felt like he was intentionally staying behind me. Max seemed to sense my change in mood. He started to pull harder on his leash, looking back nervously at the man behind us. That only made me more anxious. I kept walking, trying to calm Max down, but now every step felt heavier, like the air around me was thickening with unease. I reached the corner of the block and decided to turn. I figured that maybe he was just walking in a circle, like I often did. But when I turned, he turned too. It wasn't a coincidence. He had stayed directly behind me and now, without breaking stride, followed my change of direction. It was like he was making sure we stayed on the same path. At that point, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I stopped walking abruptly, pretending to adjust Max's leash, trying to force a look back without being too obvious. Sure enough, the man had stopped too. He was still standing at the same spot, just far enough away that I couldn't get a good look at his face, but he was watching me. He hadn't been walking toward a destination. He had been following me. He was watching me. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. What was I supposed to do? Should I confront him? Or should I keep walking and hope he would leave me alone? But I didn't want to take any chances. I decided to do the one thing I had avoided doing, cut through the park behind my block. It was a shortcut, and it would take me away from the street and out of sight. I turned sharply, heading for the park entrance, and I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me, quickening just a little, matching my speed. My heart skipped a beat. It was like he was reacting to my decision to change direction. I didn't look back this time. I just kept walking, my legs moving faster, feeling a sense of panic rising in my chest. Max was now pulling on the leash harder than ever, his ears back, his body tense. I reached the park and didn't look back again. Instead, I focused on the path ahead, the familiar trees lining the edges of the walkway. There were fewer lights here, but it was a more direct route home. But as I entered the park, I heard something that made my blood run cold, footsteps behind me. Faster now. Not just matching my pace, but speeding up. This wasn't just a coincidence anymore. I didn't dare look back, but I knew he was there. I could hear him closing the distance, the sound of his footfalls getting louder. I couldn't risk it. I could feel the fear creeping up on me, tightening in my chest. I broke into a run. Max, who had been picking up on my panic, barked loudly and ran with me, his paws pounding on the pavement. My heart raced as I sprinted through the park, ignoring the burning in my lungs. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I could only hear him now, his footsteps too close, the sound of them matching mine in a disturbing rhythm. It was as though he had anticipated my every move. I was almost to the other side of the park when I heard the unmistakable sound of him speeding up even more. Just as I neared the exit, I glanced over my shoulder. The man was right there, only a few feet behind me. I didn't think, I just pushed myself harder, desperate to get out of the park and back onto the main road. Finally, I saw the familiar glow of streetlights ahead, and I bolted for them, my legs burning, Max barking wildly beside me. I didn't look back once I hit the street. I just kept running, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me with every step. When I finally reached the safety of my front door, I stopped, panting, trying to gather myself. I looked back toward the park. There was no sign of him anymore, but I couldn't shake the feeling. He had been there, watching me, following me in the shadows. And even though I didn't see him again that night, the unease lingered. It stayed with me, a reminder of how quickly things can turn when something doesn't feel right. I don't walk late at night anymore. Not after that. I don't know why I remember everything about that night so clearly. Maybe it's because it was the last time I ever went to a party like that. Or maybe it's because what happened still feels unreal, even though I know it happened. I'm not really a party person, but I went because a few friends from work were going, and I needed a break from the usual routine. You know how it is, you get tired of the same old thing and want to mix it up. It was a house party, nothing special, and it was already past midnight when I arrived. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, just a group of people having drinks, playing music, laughing, that kind of thing. The house was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town, far enough from the main strip to be isolated but close enough that people could walk there if they wanted to. The hosts, a couple of guys I didn't know that well but had met through my friend Jake, greeted me at the door. They were in their late 20s, a bit younger than me, but they seemed friendly enough. I said my hellos and stepped inside. The place was packed, there were at least 20 people. Everyone was talking, laughing, dancing, and the music was loud. The usual party vibe. At first, everything felt normal. I grabbed a drink and joined the crowd near the back, just people watching mostly. After a while, I started to notice someone who didn't fit in. He was standing off to the side, not talking to anyone, just watching. I'm not sure why it stood out to me at first. He was dressed in dark clothes, not formal but also not like the casual partygoers. He had a serious expression, almost like he wasn't there to have fun, just observing. I didn't think too much about it at the time. Maybe he was just a quiet guy, or someone who didn't know anybody but still came anyway. But there was something strange about the way he stood. It wasn't the usual kind of wallflower thing where someone just hangs back and doesn't engage. This guy didn't just look bored or awkward. He was scanning the room, his eyes moving fast, from person to person, always looking. It was as if he was taking inventory of everyone there, and that made me uneasy. I saw him a few more times throughout the night. He never moved from his spot near the edge of the room, but he was always watching. It was like he was studying us. I tried to push the feeling away, telling myself I was just overthinking it. People get weird at parties, right? Maybe he was shy, maybe he was drunk and just zoning out. But the way he never interacted with anyone, how he just stood there, watching, made me feel like I wasn't imagining it. Around 2 a.m., the music started to get louder, the crowd started to get rowdier, and I figured it was about time to head home. I didn't know anyone very well at the party, and I was starting to feel like I was just standing there, staring at the same faces for hours. As I turned toward the door to leave, I saw him again, still in the same spot, still looking. But this time, something was different. I walked toward the door, but I noticed out of the corner of my eye that he was moving. He didn't walk like someone who was just heading for the kitchen or to the bathroom. It wasn't like he was casually making his way across the room. It was like he was following me without actually moving toward me. I didn't know why, but I could feel his eyes on me. I glanced over at him, and our eyes locked for just a second. I can't explain what happened next. I wish I could. I don't know why it suddenly felt like I was the one being hunted. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, so focused, so intent, like he knew exactly what I was going to do before I did it. I kept my gaze on him for a moment too long, and then I turned back to the door. I was almost out of the room when I felt it. The unmistakable sensation of someone standing behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know it was him. I felt him close, too close, and I knew he was following me. I kept walking faster, just trying to get out. My heart was pounding in my chest. My hand was on the doorknob when I heard his voice, soft but unmistakable. Leaving so soon? I froze. It was him, right behind me. I didn't turn around to answer. I could barely even breathe. I wanted to bolt out of that door, but I was paralyzed. "Why don't you stick around?" he said again, quieter this time, almost like a suggestion. It wasn't threatening, not in a direct way, but it was so wrong that it made me sick to my stomach. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just turn around and face him. I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to stop myself from showing just how scared I was. Instead, I twisted the knob and stepped outside. The cool night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop moving. I walked as fast as I could, not daring to look back. I made it to the sidewalk, and I couldn't stop myself from looking over my shoulder. I didn't see him right away, but that didn't mean he wasn't there. I kept walking, faster now, not caring that I was probably drawing attention from anyone who might be nearby. I kept expecting to hear footsteps behind me, but it was too quiet. I didn't even stop to check if he was still inside. I didn't care. I got to my car, got inside, locked the doors, and just sat there for a while, trying to calm myself down. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the steering wheel. It felt like he was still watching me, even though I couldn't see him. I couldn't shake that feeling, not all the way home. I never went back to another party like that. I don't know what that guy's deal was or why he was there, but I haven't seen him since. Every time I hear a knock at my door late at night, I freeze. The memory of his voice, his presence, has stayed with me. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't left when I did, but I know I don't want to find out. It started around the middle of the week. I remember because I had just finished my homework and was sitting by the window, mindlessly staring out at the street. I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, so when a car parked across from our house at almost the same time every evening, I thought it was odd, but not enough to be concerned. It was a plain sedan, nothing special. Just sitting there, headlights off, engine running low. The first couple of nights, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe the guy was waiting for someone or maybe he was just passing through. But as the days went on, I started noticing patterns. Same car, same time, same spot. And every time I glance outside, the guy would still be sitting there, not moving. It was weird. On the third night, after the car had been there for about an hour, I decided to take a look. Maybe I'd been watching too much TV or reading too many crime thrillers, but something didn't sit right. The way he just sat there, not getting out, not doing anything. It bugged me. So, I decided to go outside and walk by the car. Not obvious, just acting casual, pretending like I was walking the dog. When I got closer, I saw the man more clearly. He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. He had a scruffy beard, the kind of guy who looks like he's been awake for too long. He had a cigarette in his hand but wasn't smoking it. He was just sitting there, looking straight ahead. I couldn't even tell if he was staring at something or just zoned out. I passed the car, trying to act normal, but I couldn't help glancing over. As I did, he turned his head and looked directly at me, locking eyes for a moment. It was only for a split second, but something about it made my stomach drop. It was a strange, cold stare, almost like he was sizing me up. I quickly walked back to the house, my heart beating a little faster than normal. By the time I got inside, I told my mom. She didn't seem too concerned. She said maybe he was just waiting for someone. That was probably the case, she told me. People wait around all the time. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next few days, the same thing happened. Same car. Same time. Same man. By then, I was getting paranoid. I started watching him more closely, especially when it was getting late, just before the streetlights turned on. Every night he'd be there, sitting in the dark, waiting. The pattern was becoming too obvious. On the 5th night, I decided to confront him. I had to. I couldn't just keep watching from the window. I needed to know what he was doing, why he was sitting outside our house for hours on end. It was around 10:30 when I saw his car pull up again. The same sedan, the same man. This time, I didn't wait. I grabbed my coat and went out the front door, walking straight toward the car. I kept my steps slow, not trying to look too eager, but my heart was racing in my chest. I tried to act like I was just walking down the sidewalk, like I wasn't about to do something crazy. When I got to the car, I stopped just short of the curb, standing a few feet away. The man didn't notice me at first. He was staring out the windshield again. I cleared my throat, loud enough for him to hear me. He looked up, and for a second, his eyes widened, like he didn't expect someone to approach him. But then he relaxed, almost like he was relieved. He put the cigarette out on the dashboard and rolled down the window. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice low and calm, like he wasn't concerned at all. I nodded, swallowing hard. "You've been sitting here every night. What are you doing? Waiting for someone?" The man didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his eyes shifting slightly, like he was trying to read me. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. "I'm waiting for someone," he said slowly, his voice strangely flat. "Someone who doesn't live here." I froze for a second, not sure what he meant. The way he said it was so odd, like there was something more behind it. I felt my stomach churn. "Who?" I asked, trying to sound confident, even though my heart was pounding. He shook his head, just a small movement, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Doesn't matter," he said. "They're not here. But I'll wait." I didn't know what to say to that. I couldn't just stand there and keep talking to him. I didn't want to make him angry. I could already feel the tension between us, like something was about to snap. "All right," I said, backing away slowly. "But I don't think you should be sitting here. It's weird." He just nodded like he understood, but the look in his eyes made me think he didn't care at all about what I said. As I turned around to leave, I could feel his gaze on me. It stayed on me the whole time I walked back to the house. I went inside and locked the door behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, still watching. It felt like he wasn't going to leave, no matter what. Every night after that, I kept an eye on the street. The car was there, the man was there. I never saw him leave, not once. Eventually, after a few more days, he stopped coming. But by then, I was too shaken to feel any relief. I kept thinking about what he'd said, how he was waiting for someone who didn't live here. It wasn't just a weird comment. There was something off about it. I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something I didn't. After that, I didn't tell anyone else about it. I didn't want to seem crazy, but I never stopped checking the street when it got dark. I never saw the man again, but I couldn't help but wonder if he was still out there, waiting. And what would have happened if I hadn't confronted him? I always liked running early in the morning. It was quiet, the air felt fresh, and the streets were mostly empty. My usual route took me through a small park about a mile from my apartment. It wasn't big, just a couple of winding paths, some benches, and a lot of trees, but it was peaceful, especially at that time of day. I'd been running there for months and never had any issues. That morning felt like any other. It was just past 5:30 a.m., and the sun was barely starting to rise. I had my usual playlist going, the one I always used to get into a rhythm. The streets were still dark, and the only people I saw were the occasional dog walkers or another runner here and there. When I reached the park, I turned onto the main path, letting my feet fall into their usual pace. I noticed him about halfway through the park. He was standing near a bench, just off the path. At first, I thought he was waiting for someone. He wasn't doing anything, no phone, no dog, nothing. Just standing there, looking straight ahead. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something about the way he stood caught my attention. Too still. Too rigid. I kept running, telling myself not to overthink it. Plenty of people use the park, and not everyone looks friendly first thing in the morning. As I got closer, I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking straight ahead anymore. He was looking at me. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept going. I didn't slow down, didn't change my pace. Just kept running. My music was still playing, but I turned the volume down low so I could hear if he said or did anything. He didn't move as I passed, but I could feel his eyes on me the entire time. About 20 steps past him, I looked over my shoulder, trying to be casual about it. He was still standing there, but now he had turned around. He was watching me. I told myself to focus. It was early, and maybe he was just out for a walk and curious about someone running by. I'd seen plenty of people in the park who seemed out of place. It didn't mean anything. But then I heard it, footsteps. At first, I thought it might just be someone else entering the park from another direction. I told myself not to panic, not to assume. But when I glanced back again, I saw him. He was walking now, heading in the same direction I was. Not running, not rushing. Just walking. He wasn't close, maybe 50 feet behind me, but he was there. I sped up a little, trying to create more distance between us. I told myself to stick to my route, not to change anything. If he was just walking, I'd be out of the park before he could get anywhere near me. I reached the end of the path and took the usual left turn toward the exit. When I glanced back again, he had turned too. My heart was pounding now, harder than it should have been from just running. I wasn't winded, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. I told myself to stay calm, to keep running, to act like nothing was wrong. But every time I looked back, he was still there. Always just far enough that it felt like I couldn't say anything or confront him, but close enough that I couldn't shake him. When I finally exited the park, I felt a small wave of relief. The street ahead was wider, brighter. A few cars passed by, their headlights cutting through the early morning gloom. I thought about stopping, waiting for him to pass, but something told me that would be worse. I didn't want him to know I was scared. I kept running, heading toward the busier part of my route. There was a gas station about a quarter mile up. It was small, but the lights were always on, and there was usually someone inside. I decided I'd stop there if he was still following me. I didn't have to look back anymore. I could hear his footsteps now. They were steady, matching my pace. Not speeding up, not slowing down. Just following. When I reached the gas station, I didn't hesitate. I turned sharply and went straight inside. The man behind the counter looked up, surprised to see someone this early. I walked to the back, pretending to grab a bottle of water, but really just trying to catch my breath. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. I stayed back there for a minute or two before glancing toward the door. He was standing outside. He wasn't looking in, just standing by the edge of the parking lot, like he was waiting for me to come out. His hands were in his pockets, and his head was tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stay in the gas station forever, but I didn't want to leave while he was still there. The man behind the counter asked if I needed help, and I almost told him what was going on. But what could he do? Call the police because someone was walking behind me? After a few minutes, the man outside moved. He didn't leave, just shifted closer to the building, standing by the corner where I couldn't see him unless I walked out. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I walked to the counter and told the clerk there was a man outside who had been following me. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the fear in it. The clerk frowned, looking toward the door, then nodded. He told me to stay inside while he went to check. I watched as he stepped out, looking around. The man was gone. The clerk came back in and told me there was no one there, but I could tell he believed me. He asked if I needed him to call someone or if I wanted to wait for a ride. I nodded, pulling out my phone to call a friend. I didn't care that it was early. I just needed someone to pick me up. While I waited, I stayed near the counter, my eyes glued to the parking lot. My friend showed up about 10 minutes later, and I ran straight to their car, not looking back. I told them everything on the ride home, and they insisted on staying with me for the rest of the day. I didn't go running for a while after that. When I finally did, I chose a different route, one with more people and fewer places to hide. But even now, I can't shake the feeling of those footsteps behind me, steady and deliberate, like they were waiting for something. Like he was waiting for something. I went out camping by myself for the first time in a long time. I usually went with a group, but I had been feeling kind of drained from everything and thought some quiet time would help. It was a spot I'd been to before, not far from a trailhead. It wasn't an official campground, but it was a clear area near a creek tucked into the woods. I set up my tent, had a quick meal, and just sat by the fire for a while, listening to the sounds of the forest. The weather was good, cool, no rain, and the stars were out. I turned in early, around 9 or so. I was tired from hiking in and setting up camp, and honestly, I was looking forward to a good night's sleep. I had packed light, just a small tent, a sleeping bag, and a few supplies. I kept my food in a bag tied up in a tree, about 20 feet from the campsite, like I'd always been told to do. You don't want animals getting into it. I woke up later, and at first, I wasn't sure why. My eyes opened in the dark, and I just lay there, trying to figure out what had woken me up. Then I heard a low, crunching sound, like something heavy stepping on twigs and leaves. It was close. My tent was small, with only a thin layer of fabric between me and whatever was out there, and I could hear every little sound. The crunching stopped for a moment, and I held my breath. Then I heard another noise, a deep, wet snuffling sound. It was loud, and it sent a cold shock through me. I knew right away what it was. A bear. There was no mistaking it. My heart started pounding. I lay as still as I could, staring up at the roof of the tent, listening. The bear moved closer, and I heard the sound of my food bag being torn at. The rope I'd used to hang it up must not have been high enough. I felt stupid for not checking it better, but now it didn't matter. All I could think was that it was right there, and if it wanted to, it could easily come toward the tent next. The sound of the bear tearing into the bag went on for what felt like forever. It huffed and grunted, and every so often, there was a loud crunch as it bit into something. I was too scared to move, even though I knew I should try to make noise or do something to scare it off. But what if that just made it mad? I didn't have anything to protect myself, no gun or bear spray, just a small camping knife that was still in my backpack. Even if I had it in my hand, I knew it wouldn't do much. I thought about trying to reach for my phone to check the time, but it was in the corner of the tent, and I didn't dare move. I didn't even want to unzip the sleeping bag. I just stayed frozen, listening. My whole body felt tense, like my muscles were locked up, and every little sound the bear made seemed to echo inside my head. At one point, I heard it moving again. The heavy steps came closer, slow and deliberate. I could feel the vibrations in the ground, just faint but there. It was coming toward the tent. My chest felt tight, and I thought I might stop breathing altogether. I squeezed my eyes shut, as if that would somehow help. The bear sniffed loudly, right next to the tent. I could hear it so clearly that I felt like I could picture it in my head, its nose brushing against the fabric, the sound of its breath, low and rumbling. My mind kept racing, imagining what would happen if it decided to push through. I could feel tears starting to well up, but I didn't move. I just kept telling myself to stay still, to stay quiet, even though every instinct was screaming at me to run. The bear circled the tent, slow and steady. I could hear its claws scraping the ground as it moved, and every step felt like it lasted an eternity. At one point, it stopped, and I thought maybe it had gone back to the food. But then I heard it again, closer this time, its breath heavy and loud. I couldn't tell how long it stayed near the tent. Time felt stretched out and strange, like hours were passing even though it might have only been minutes. Finally, the bear let out a low grunt and moved away. I could hear it walking back toward where the food bag had been, the steps growing fainter. I didn't move. I stayed curled up in the sleeping bag, my fists clenched so tight that my hands were sore. I was too scared to do anything, too scared to even think clearly. The noises from the bear went on for a while longer, but they were farther away now. Eventually, they stopped altogether. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just lay there, every little creak or rustle making my heart race all over again. When the first light started to come through the tent, I finally dared to unzip it and look outside. The food bag was gone, completely torn off the rope and dragged away somewhere. There were deep claw marks in the dirt and mud near the tree, and even some on the tree trunk itself. I packed up as fast as I could. My hands were shaking the whole time, and I kept looking around, expecting to see the bear coming back. By the time I was on the trail heading back to my car, the sun was fully up, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every little noise in the woods made me jump. When I finally got back to my car and locked the doors, I felt like I could breathe again. I sat there for a long time before I started the engine, just trying to calm down. Even now, thinking about it makes my stomach twist. It's not like I was attacked or anything, but being that close to something so powerful and knowing there's nothing you can do, it stays with you. It makes you feel small,